gone into this over so many years, over 15 years in the making. And Minister Dixon Morris, I know you must be feeling very proud to be charting the end of so many batons being passed. I too will want to add my thanks to the technical committee and members of the Ministry of Education, not just present, but in the past, persons who have played your roles in the past, who have contributed to this very significant piece of legislation. Mr. President, the purpose of the Act is to essentially establish the guidance and the provision of individuals who are entrusted with the shaping of our young people and their minds, their development. And this goes right across the board. I personally, I impart in terms of education at the University of the Hospital, where I do with training psychiatrists and medical students. And so it is very relevant for us to recognize that what we are crafting here is not just for primary schools. It goes right across the board in education. And I would like to ensure that we reflect on the fact that to as best enable our highest standards being sought, that the compensation package that has been recently applied to this group of individuals makes it so much easier for their task. And so I want to make sure that we recognize that that significant adjustment in their salaries is a significant push towards those higher standards. But however, Mr. President, I have to reflect on the fact, and I have raised it, and I am hopeful that we will be having some adjustments. The recognition of the lack of health input in the drafting of this piece of legislation. I think more and more, and I can understand it, I have risen on so many occasions and brought this to our attention, and specifically mental health. But let me just also put it in context of physical health. Our teachers face challenges daily with kids who are classified on the spectrum in some way, autism, Asperger's, ADHD, the neurodevelopmental disorders. It has been shown by research and is now being taken into legislative consideration in other jurisdictions, the fact that processed foods and food additives significantly worsen ADHD symptoms. And I am bringing this to our attention to relate the importance of the consideration of health when we are considering the education of our children. Such studies are showing that there is almost a 60% reduction in ADHD symptoms with the removal of some of these, I would want to say, toxic elements in our nutrition. But I go further. As we consider the clause 34 and the reflections in the 5th schedule of being the fit and proper criteria, there are significant references to the person meeting professional standards, that they have a certain conduct and behavior that is reflective of what we would hope to be imparting on our children in such way. And so I have made that recommendation that the members of the council be considered to include persons with health and especially mental health training as part of the inclusion. And I think this is being considered, and I celebrate that. I don't think I need to belabor that point. One point I want to highlight is the necessary PR work that needs to happen with respect to homeschooling. As it exists right now, persons who are homeschooling essentially pursue that path for their children. And what this act does is allow for a parent or a caregiver who is engaging in homeschooling for their own children to continue to do so. However, if they are going to be educating other children, they need to abide by the provisions of this act and get registered. Might I suggest that we have a very significant PR campaign around this? Public education, thank you. Public education campaign around this. Because the silo exists, and those persons tend to be operating sometimes in a bubble, and we need to ensure that this is learned. Mr. President, I won't be very long, but I took particular note for the consideration of this bill and a personal matter that I will use this opportunity to address. The title of the bill includes the following words: to formalize and advance teaching as a profession, regulating the entry and standing of members of the teaching profession, to establish and maintain professional standards for teacher competency and practice. Now, Mr. President, in my State of the Nation debate, I rose and I brought to the country's attention my consideration for the standards of our leadership. That's what we're doing here. We are ensuring that our children receive the highest and the best that we can offer them. They deserve it. And Mr. President, as I reflected on this bill, there is no question that the leadership of our country impacts on our children. And so, when I brought this image of the opposition leader with a man in chains on the screen, and I decided not to do it again today because it defiles our parliament. This image, Mr. President, is an image of leadership that our children should never be exposed to, in my opinion. For someone who is seeking to impart the standards and reflect the standards of our country that our children are exposed to, in my mind, this should never be a possibility. Now, Mr. President, I will go further. Because in response to me doing my civic duty, my duty in this House, to relate this standard for our people and my concerns that someone would choose to do that who is seeking to lead our country, I'm doing my job, which is what we're hoping to do with this bill, to ensure the standards for our children, Senator Crawford. And what did the opposition do? in response to me raising this, they attacked me personally. They dug up and reflected on my divorce and reflected that I am a bitter woman because I am divorced from my white husband. How very low and chauvinistic. It would never happen to a man. It would never happen to a man. And I sat silently and I watched it. I have 2 children. My son, when that image came up, broke down in here. And they attack my personal life. I'm going to give a little background to that. Steve Ashley. Steve Ashley, I have known for years. Steve Ashley attended my wedding with his wife. Steve Ashley was the individual who conveyed the offer from the PNP on 2 occasions, offering me a sure seat to run in elections. We are debating standards, Senator Crawford, standards. The first seat, when I was entering in Eastern St. Andrew, they offered me a sure seat. I heard mention of Minister of State in Health. I am quality, but I like quality to choose. And when I reflected on that offer, I said, I could not look at what these people have done to our country in 18 and a half years and go and hit the desk for my country on that side. And I turned down the offer that was conveyed by Steve Ashley. 1 week later, I was announced as a candidate in Eastern St. Andrew. We know how history plays out. I won't even give you the background of what really happened there. The next election, in 2016, again, even though I had declared my allegiance with the JLP, because I put Jamaica first, I was again offered a sure seat through Steve Ashley. And again, I refused it. And so, I was told I have a target on my back. So I am here to reflect the standards of a woman in politics in Jamaica. And I repeat that if a male had gotten up and objectively pointed out that the standards being offered by the opposition of leadership of its country is not in keeping with what we want for our children, that male would not have been attacked as being bitter about the end of their marriage. And so, Mr. President, as we contemplate this piece of legislation that so much effort has gone into, our children need that guidance. And Minister Morris Dixon, I see we are bringing, and I celebrate the effort to bring technology to our children. Please, as I have said, let us remind them also of their ancestral intelligence to balance that technology. We do not want them to lose their identity so they cannot recognize when they are being manipulated into accepting a standard that is not good for them. And so, Mr. President, I took significant time after I saw the whole debacle that they were trying to create around me doing my civic duty to say to people that as we choose to impart on our children and take Jamaica, look at what has happened to Jamaica's development under this administration. Look, I can boast and I can say, any picture of my leader, anybody can put it out there. I dare you guys to do that. Any picture of my leader can be shown to our children. I dare the opposition to do that. And so, Mr. President, as we contemplate and as we seek to approve this bill today, this act today, I implore us to reflect on the standards that we seek to impart on our children, not just here, but at the helm of leadership of our country. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Longmore. Senator Crawford. Maybe you need to use two hands.
Check, check. Mr. President, I stand hopefully to focus only on the bill in front of us as it relates to the Jamaica Teachers, the Jamaica Teacher Council. I myself have no knowledge of the fulsome report that was given by the previous presentation, nor the role that the individual whose name was mentioned. I will not seek to respond on that particular matter. I myself was not invited to such wedding and have no knowledge of what happened, therefore. Mr. President, education is in crisis. We have had multiple conversations in the Senate for which I don't need to repeat. But when the World Bank suggests that after 17 years of exposure, the average Jamaican student has a representation of approximately 11 years of effective education. And the latest report that we have seen suggests that only 18% of Jamaican students leaving high school achieved 5 subjects, including math and English. That 5 subjects, including math and English, is tantamount to what would be the GED in the, and let me pause to recognize some 40s in the house as well. On our 100th anniversary, I see the president of the PTA. Here as the president of the PTA, but always a 40s, indeed. And As the ABCA in its colors. But when you... Yes, no, they're distinguished KC students. But when you look at the reality, that is equivalent to the GED. And in the United States, 18% achieving the GED will never have been accommodated or facilitated. In fact, Mr. President, if we should really look at the numbers of 36,000 persons within each birth cohort, then 18% would suggest only 8,000, less than 8,000 is receiving the necessary GED. It would suggest about 28,000 not getting those standards. I see some eyes open on from the president himself. It sounds crazy. But 10% of 36,000 is 3,600. 20% therefore is 2 times 3,600. That would be 7,200. If the ministry's report that only 18% is getting 5 subjects, including math and English, it would suggest that that 18 is less than 20, which is less than 7,200. Those are the numbers that we have before us. It will therefore suggest that from this 36,000, approximately 28,000 have not achieved a GED each year. And if that's the reality each year, then it means that within 10 years, 280,000, and of our most effective working age, 20 to 40, in that 20 years, we'll have over 500,000 not having a GED. The United States would never, I will not be delayed on such important document with banter today. However, Mr. President, there is in front of us a partisan report that we still have not tabled in the Parliament.
That's right.
It could not be that this report is so important for implementation, and yet there's not been a parliamentary debate for different representatives of different interests to suggest what they believe of the 365 recommendations.
Right. One for each day of the year.
It has been suggested, however, that the implementation is well underway. We have had vague communications such as commenced implementation of 136 recommendations, and that is a quotation. Stakeholders consistently, however, expressed concern, leading to newspaper articles with titles such as, and I quote, "Is the government ignoring the partisan report?" End quote. In January 2025, the Gleaner headline suggested, and I quote, "Jamaica Teachers Association calls for urgent implementation of the recommendations of the partisan report." Indeed, Mr. President, the RJR News just yesterday reported the president of the Jamaica Teachers Association, Dr. Mark Smith, voiced concerns about the country's capacity to fund implementation of the recommendations of the Jamaica Education Transformation Commission's report. Mr. President, there's no wonder that there's such anxiety among the stakeholders. Indeed, ETOC, which my colleague is mentioning, have suggested that at current 7 reported completed items of the 365.
7.
Within this 7, Mr. President, I'm quoting, one of the completed tasks is, and I quote, "requesting approval for increased budget to support in-service training of early childhood practitioners," end quote.
What?
One of the 7 achieved
Can't be.
recommendations is to request funding. Not achieve, not receive,
Request.
but to request funding. No wonder, Mr. President, the issues facing education neither begin nor end with the teachers. Indeed, while it is important to have competent and available facilitators of learning, and that is essential, Jamaica's education issues goes way deeper and must be attacked in an effective way and fulsome way. I will mention one of those for our consideration, which is absenteeism, incorrectly termed by some on the opposition side, including the Prime Minister, as truancy. Truancy is when a child is sent to school and chooses to be absent. Absenteeism is when, for reasons the parents have considered, the child was not sent. We have celebrated just last year a return to pre-COVID levels of absenteeism, which is 22%. And we were celebratory. That was in the newspaper. However, Mr. President, just give me a second. However, Mr. President,
It's a serious matter, you know.
10% absenteeism is termed chronic absenteeism in education literature. 10%. We celebrated 22%. That 22% being the national average does not recognize that is an over 30% in rural areas, and in deep rural areas up to 48% absenteeism. The simple fact that education is cumulative suggests that high levels of absenteeism, some research have suggested, that at 20% you will likely operate in an exam as if you didn't attend school. No wonder 82% are failing.
Yes, yes.
I can tell you from my own experience that if I am intending to teach quadratic equation on a Thursday, I would teach factorization on a Tuesday. It is that factorization that forms the basis of quadratic equation, in particular the factorization method. A child, therefore, absent on Tuesday will find it quite difficult to function on Thursday. So while they're absent only for 20% of the time, their functioning is impacted for 80% of the time. These are realities that we face. A University of the West Indies research tried to ascertain what are some of the reasons for this absenteeism. And while we'll quickly suggest that they can't afford it, simple things like a bus stop contributed. Because while most of us with a car would not understand, if you have no shelter, you will not send the child out in the rain.
Right.
Therefore, if it is raining at 7, the child don't go out, and then by 9 when the rain ends, the child no longer goes. So simple matters such as just shelter. There also a reality of a lack of transportation in rural communities that are farming communities. One of the reasons for this lack of transportation is that there's not sufficient two-way traffic for it to be feasible for a taxi to go to and from these communities. They will often return empty and see no value in running from these communities. One area that was mentioned in this House by the Minister of Finance, Ty Dixon, which is in Northwest St. Catherine, a high farming community. Many are children trying to reach in St. Catherine, Northwest. The Minister of Finance is from Ty Dixon.
From Ty Dixon.
I hope she's still registered there to vote and will offer me her support.
Yeah.
However,
However,
in Ty Dixon, based on transportation needs, some students living in St. Catherine goes to St. Anne to get back to school into St. Catherine.
No, what?
Because of the direction of transportation. So there are multiple reasons that the teachers are not the central reason, and therefore it is for this reason that we are concerned that in general the bill seems more punitive than supportive. Yeah. Punitive means focus on punishment rather than on support. The opposite of punitive, therefore, will be rehabilitative or developmental. What are some of the basic reasons we suggest that it is more punitive than supportive? Heavy fines and even imprisonment for unlicensed teaching. We'll get further into that a little bit later. Up to 1.5 million or 12 months in jail. There are way more dangerous activities that don't carry such a fine, including dangerous driving. Vague criteria such as competent to teach and fit and proper have not been defined. No guaranteed legal aid for teachers under investigation, etc. We will come further into those as we move along. There's also no built-in access to the continuous professional development. While it is requested, I see nothing in the bill that suggests how it would be paid for and other realities such as that. No emphasis on mentorship, and teachers must basically prove their worth repeatedly. Therefore, the Act, I believe, doesn't sufficiently support good teachers, instead seek to punish any negative that is recommended, that exists. I'm sorry. So you will have a chance. You have purposely waited until after I speak. You'll have your chance. Thank you. Volunteers, for example, Mr. President, are affected, including volunteers for examination prep. The bill itself suggests that volunteers, it says, it doesn't clarify who the status of unpaid instructors. The Act does not apply to unpaid, voluntary, ad hoc teachers. Their exemption is based on payment status, not based on the subject taught. It covers literacy, PEP, CXC examination, prep is all covered. Now, however, Mr. President, what is ADAC? For example, I myself have been for the last multiple years, I teach every Saturday, wherever I'm available. I teach math now in Linstead every Saturday. Is that ADAC? Because I go every Saturday. Now, what does that mean? Well, the esteemed lawyer is suggesting that is not in a school environment, yet it is at Charlie Mount High School. However, it is not in the daily school activities, but the bill itself covers extra classes. The bill itself covers people who are, what do you call those people who are
Volunteer?
assisting
As teachers.
Well, keeping extra class and tutoring, tutors. It includes tutors. So therefore, a person who goes and teach for pay on a Saturday would be included in this bill. A person who, so the only savior for the volunteer is how ad hoc is defined. Because in my case, having gone there every Saturday removes ad hoc from the conversation. While I have no intention of being a teacher. You all know my intention is to be on that side, managing the system. So therefore,
right,
why
right.
would I
You
have
shall
to...
do a better job.
Well, even if I'm not on that side, my second intention is to be on this side, ensuring that side pass good laws. However, Mr. President, when we check the situation, the dependence on ad hoc, I believe, put many people at risk. It could affect community base, it could affect churches. The other reality is that it doesn't define what is pay. For example, if a person receives any stipend, if a person receives travel contribution, if a person... Yes. And so therefore, if a person receives a travel subsidy, for example, to a rural space to help with education literacy, is that subsidy pay for travel? The bill doesn't clearly define that. And with such extreme penalties, individuals may be afraid to risk themselves and participate. So therefore, we need to add a definition of what is ad hoc so that we can actually be safe in moving forward. I agree with Senator Longmore that the bill doesn't speak to mental health, but it also doesn't seem to consider sorry, I am still at the wrong one here. But it doesn't seem to consider appeals. And there is seemingly no appeal, no protection in appeal. So for example, within the bill, section 69, the right to appeal, deregistration, suspension, or non-renewal. However, there's no stay of decision during the appeal process. The person may actually be without salary, etc., during the appeal process. And however, employers must act on council's decision immediately, according to the bill. Teachers must stop teaching even while the appeal is pending. Legal ineligibility begins upon the council's decision. However, so this implication for teachers include they cannot continue teaching during their appeal, which the appeal process said it should be no more than 6 months. But that is only one hurdle of appeal. They can carry it to court. And then there's another hurdle of appeal. So this person may, first of all, we are at risk of owing people a lot of money if they win their final appeal. But the impact, the immediate impact on the teacher have not been considered. And by extension, this is something that we are concerned about. The system lets the council act immediately, but makes the teacher wait months and possibly even years without income. This might be justice delayed and by extension, justice denied. The appeals, however, can be extensive. As I said, they can go to the previous council. And therefore, I believe that the teachers should at least be paid to the first court opinion or the first court findings. That court is what the lawyers, that court is not the appeal court, that is the Supreme Court. At least the Supreme Court ruling, the teacher should continue to receive some form of remuneration as they move forward. The other thing that we found here is that the Board of Governance under the JCT Act, the composition is 6 teachers nominated by a recognized teachers association. Now, again, we check here, what is a recognized teachers association? Why is the JTA not named officially in the bill? So the JTA could be subvented here. 2 university representatives, at least one must be from UWI. And I wondered, with UTEC also being a government entity, the specification of UWI and seemingly the neglect of UTEC, I don't understand why was that done. And at some point, UTEC must be stopped treated as a bastard child.
Right.
If it is, that is 2 university representatives, it could have ended there. If you're going to say including UWI, and I'm a graduate of UWI, so I hold no grief, but why UTEC was not mentioned here? And how could UTEC be in the vocational center, which we have all spoken about on multiple occasions, not included? It says also 2 non-university educational training institutions. I think that is kind of trying to put in the teachers' colleges. But I also know that many teachers' colleges, I know Michael, for example, is seeking to become a university.
Yes. Yes, Senator.
Mr. President, I rise on a point of order. Senator Crawford, forgive me. I have to make this point. You used that term a while ago, and I think if I know you well, you will concede the point. The term bastard child. I rise, Mr. President, because we have gone through so much in our history to remove that terminology and that thinking from the psyche of our children. And I'm not going to belabor my intervention because I have a feeling the gentleman I know Senator Crawford to be, he will concede the point. May it please you.
Thank you.
I'm happy you know me so well, therefore I concede with immediate effect. We need no longer to go further, however, the point remains, why is UTEC not being equally considered as the University of the West Indies at this particular point? And if there's going to be a specification in the bill for the University of the West Indies, I believe UTEC playing a similar role within the space of Jamaica. If this was a Caribbean bill, then I could see UWI's specification. But a Jamaican bill, I cannot see why UTEC. But I do accept that we can continue to use such negative language when I know a lot of children will be watching me based on their affinity to my presentations. But I accept. It also says 3 religious denomination nominees. Again, is this only the churches? Or does this religious denomination extend to Rastafarian and other realities? We need to know if that is so. And if a 2-parent representative, John, plug in that before it down there, and 2 independent school reps. Now, again, we ask, it also speaks to 1 teacher based on their display of significance or of competence. Now, I don't understand, if there are 6 teachers to be selected, where does the 7th teacher come from? On their show of competence. And who select this person on their show of competence? So if it is that we need 7 teachers, I would presume that the JTA would look at competence. Yeah. I would not suggest that the JTA would send 60 incompetent teachers. So teachers' selection, I believe, should be reserved to their union. I don't see how it is that the minister or whoever gets the opportunity to select another teacher on their own assumption of this person's capacity. I don't see that to be a reasonable thing. The minister has significant appointment powers. Indeed, the recommendations by the JTA doesn't even have to be accepted. It is the minister's appointment that it is 100%. So if the minister is not in agreement with the JTA's recommendation, there's nothing in the bill, based on my understanding, that suggests that that recommendation, who have the veto powers seems to be the minister at the end of the day. And so, therefore, we also have some issues with that. We see a term within the bill say, be competent to teach. This is an undefined standard, what it means to be competent to teach. Section 28(1)(b), licensing requires a person to, and I quote, be competent to teach. But the Act does not define competence, leaves interpretation up to the Council for future regulations. Undefined standard is a potential for arbitrary enforcement. No clarity on what competence means. Teacher could be denied a license or renewal without misconduct, just on the basis of a perception of competence to teach. It may target outspoken educators, and it may also target persons in failing schools. For example, could competence be the grades that you are getting, the averages that you're producing? And a teacher could always say that based on the realities of my school, for example, recently I saw in the news, again for the concern expressed by Senator Golding, I won't call the name of the school, but you would have seen in the news where one school had a literacy rate, a secondary school, of almost 210 out of 212.
What?
They had to do intervention. They're trying an intervention now in that school at the 7th grade. However, when I was reading the article, what struck me was the principal said, but the 8th grade have the same reality last year, 7th grade. So that teacher might say, how do you hold me accountable for my competence to teach can be measured by a input of incompetence? I mean, and a lot of us celebrate some schools. I went to the Kingston College, the great Kingston College. But KC get better crop of students than many other schools that we're better than. And KC get great alumni support. And KC get better parents as it relates to economic capacity and interest. And a lot of times these are double parent homes. And a lot of times they are competent in jobs that earn them sufficient income. So I can tell you from my own experience as a teacher, I taught at a school, 53 children in the class. They had no geometry set. They had no calculator. They had no book. First of all, the 40 minutes they had to teach, 10 minutes was to find a desk or a chair. They had to go to the class that went to PE or went to lab to find a desk and a chair, because I had them after they had lab. And when you save that 10 minutes, they had no books. Going into exam now, some schools haven't received rental books.
What?
All their rental books. Yes, persons have asked for 35, received 7. And this is the reality that we face. So when you have these situations, how does that teacher be judged by the outcome in the reality? First of all, they have done lunch. I make the joke all the time that when they say the area of a circle is pi r square, him stuck a pi. R square means nothing to him. Because he must say, is it pecan, is it apple? He has no lunch. I've been to another school, 10 o'clock teaching maths, the his head is on the decks. Why is our head on the decks? Research have shown that many of our girls have iron deficiency. That once their menstrual thing have started and they're not eating proper meals, them basically lethargic for the entire day. How do you judge that teacher? So when you see this, I think that it allows for the sneaking in of the performance-based pay without the discussion of the performance-based pay. And to that extent, I am concerned about it because competence have not been defined, and I believe that the teachers are at high risk if they don't demand for competence to teach to be sufficiently defined. Right? So we want that to be defined, competence to teach, so that we know what that means and what are the parameters that can come from that. What is the jurisdiction of discipline? Can complaints go directly to the council? The answer is yes. Under Section 50, a person can complain directly to the council. Anyone can submit a written complaint. Anyone at all can submit a written complaint. A person may make a complaint in writing to the council. Now, can the teacher appeal the decision of the council? The JCT Act gives no appeal rights over, the decision of a school board to the council. So I wondered at that time, if anybody can complain to the council, what if a teacher feel aggrieved? What does the council allow for her? Because when a school give you 4 letters, the council will eventually consider all 4 letters when something come before that council. So if I feel this letter should not exist, that I was wrongfully treated, the council give me no repeal. But anybody can go to the council against me, but I can't go to the council. No, not in appeal. Now, complainants can refile, however, a complaint that they made to the school, to the council. So if a person make a complaint against a teacher to the principal and don't feel satisfied with the principal's finding, that person can then push up that to the council, putting this teacher now in a second level. A second round. Now I presume that the council would consider what the school found. But I am saying that that seems to be that there needs to be specific definition of what the council should consider and what the schools should be left with. Section 51(4), if the school board fails to act in 6 months, the council may also, well, it says the council must take up the appeal. We see what is happening down in St. James, where there is a fallout happening with the chairman and the principal. I personally feel that it wasn't adequately dealt with the first time because the principal indicated that he wrote and had multiple signatures about their unwillingness to work with the chairman. I believe that the initial intervention before reappointment should have been mediation to find out if this is possible to work out. But we're doing mediation after the reappointment and after now the school is being closed and by teachers and parents and all kind of things. However, Section 54 suggests
move on.
Council can so 51(4), I believe, creates risk for continuous and almost abuse by persons who are feeling aggrieved, having gone through. As I said earlier, volunteer teaching, the considerations such as travel stipend, meal allowances, phone data top-ups, honoraria, because of the wide definition of compensation. But it also opens abuse, because if these might not, let us say these are not considered a travel stipend, then I can pay a man by telling you it's a stipend. And therefore this man now is not registered, but because you want him teach my class or my picnic, I give him his salary as a travel stipend. So it opens the avenue for abuse. But without that avenue for abuse, it creates risk for volunteers. And by extension, that is a problem within the bill that and I can tell you as a volunteer, I will not risk 1.5 million or 12 months in jail. No. So Charlie Mount not seen me after today until I know what is going on with that.
And children will suffer.
Yes. Oh, this is the last week before exam. May exclude. How does this affect? Can I continue, Mr. President? Now,
acting leader, the speaker's time is up.
Mr. President, I'm hearing from my right that 5 minutes would be an appropriate time to extend, but given that the speaker's
I agree entirely. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to offer him the privilege as acting leader and ask that his time be extended for him to complete his presentation.
I'll go along with that, and I'll persuade my colleagues.
Thank you. Those in favor? Thank you.
I thank you, Mr. President, for having acknowledged my new portfolio as the acting leader. But Does the JTC bill speak to YouTube and online lessons? Again, I've learned this in government. When you're making laws, you have to look at all the loopholes that exist. Now, if it is that I can't go to Charlemont and teach anymore, then I just do it on YouTube. So does it qualify? Because there are also a lot of online classes that people either pay a subscription to the thing or pay the person up front to join their online classes. So I wondered if it went to online, meaning social media. And section 4.1 applies to teachers in schools, tutoring, or training programs. Does not mention digital creation, such as YouTube, etc. If not employed by a school, tutoring, or running a home program, posting educational tips on YouTube or TikTok is not formal teaching. Not practicing as a teacher under the Act's legal language. So what it seemed to be that what it will do is to divert tutors to the online space. And instead of face-to-face, they go to the online space. And then that now creates a income barrier for persons who can't afford the internet bill and who in the rural area and stuff like that. So it creates sometimes new boy make the most nice.
Yes, yeah.
There is an importance in any law for what it police and what it should police. And therefore, yes. At least I never said new dog like the Prime Minister.
Right.
Now, acts, there's a gray area, however. The Act excludes only those with no pay, reward, or consideration. Now, if there's ads, subscriptions, a patron, etc., affiliate links, this become blurred, and we must consider that. It lacks clarity for 21st century digital education, and so we have to ensure that we understand that. Now, I myself, again, have YouTube videos, so I am very interested in knowing if it does police that, the existing YouTube videos, is that grandfathered in? Should that be removed? All of those things have not been spoken to within the bill. Does it impact clubs, coaching, and the community roles that may exist? The answer to that is yes. If the roles involves any form of teaching is affected, teachers include education, teaching includes by the bill, education delivery, curriculum support, instructional services, according to section 2. It therefore applies to after-school clubs, tutoring, and coaching. For example, maths club supervision, football or netball team coach, can this be perceived to include teaching? And if it is perceived to include teaching, how much does a person not approved to execute that can go ahead and do that? Because within the registration and the licensing, you can be licensed as an ex-teacher, what you are licensed to teach. You can be licensed as an English teacher. How does that contribute to a math teacher and debate club, or robotics if I am a science teacher but not engineering? All of those things come into play. Now, the Act also covers, as I said, coaches teaching under school or ministry programs, those designated by the minister under section 4, and stuff like that. Licenses, what's the risk? The license may be suspended if a teacher exceeds authorized subject areas. Unlicensed coach may be barred from engaging with students. Schools may face penalties for using unauthorized educators. The bill unintentionally, it seems, criminalizes passion that can come in the after-school programs that exist. A music club leader or retired coach helping youth could be deemed as unauthorized. And if the music club don't have a music teacher, now I'm not good at music, but Janice here is an excellent singer. She might not be approved for teaching music. However, participation in the music club may cause for great penalties if she
Some people can speak about what they don't know.
Yeah. Impact of the JTA on community-based basic school. Remember, mandatory licensing, no exceptions. So all teachers must be registered, licensed, or authorized to teach. This is section 24.1. It includes basic schools. Rural communities and donor-sponsored institutions are also included. Now, have you been to many rural communities, especially dying communities with 3 and 4 picnic, and Auntie Jane is just facilitating because there is no closed school within that space. Auntie Jane now have to not only be licensed, but Auntie Jane must be competent to teach.
She doesn't know competence.
And Auntie Jane is just facilitating these dying communities, especially because there is a desire for proximity for certain age children. So
More than desire, it's a need.
yeah, but parents seem to be disposed, because I've observed even where there is formal, we call that type of school, the first 3 to 6 year old schools, if it is not in proximity to their home, they seem to prefer the ones that are in proximity to their home. Yes. So to that extent, they seem to put these rural communities.
Senator Crawford, what you are saying is that you, not when I say you, the argument would be put forward to sacrifice competence where there is, as you refer to, in a dying community.
Yes.
You are prepared to have the 2 or 3 kids who are there deal with somebody who is incompetent?
Well, yes, that's why I'm saying competence is not defined. But there seems to me that there's space within the bill for caveats, for special considerations, because those communities, the children have 2 options, Auntie Jane or no one. And I would submit to you, no one might be greater than Auntie Jane, especially because Auntie Jane not only serves the role of teaching, but also serves as the guardian. But she's a babysitter, and that allows for the parent to work. A lot of these young women who are incapable to go back into the working space is because they must take care of the child wholeheartedly. There's no one else to do so. And so therefore these dying communities, I don't believe the option, even Auntie Jane's competence cannot be measured by if she have a degree. Auntie Jane's competence might have evolved over time. So I believe that there might be need for caveats within the bill, that there can be special considerations because all our realities are not the same. And this is the circumstances that this bill seems to ignore, that all our circumstances are the same. So we have a form of informal education sector, especially at the basic school level. Volunteers, parents, retired teachers. Auntie Jane might be a retired teacher. Should she have to be licensed further every 5 years to continue? This bill can't do that, sir, because it is the geographic and economic realities that Yes. So I'm saying, Mr. President, you see, sometimes I am delayed by naysayers, that our realities are not singular. There are spaces that persons should not be faced with should be faced with a line of least resistance for their continued participation. This bill suggests that even if a retired teacher living in the deepest of rural areas is willing to facilitate a veranda basic school, that she should go through the line of resistance of being licensed and registered for continued participation, because these children are not her children. Because these children are more than one, or there's
but why should the state agree to have these children disadvantaged to the extent that they are being taught by somebody who you are suggesting may not be competent at all? In other words, what you are doing is perpetuating the inequalities in the system. In other words, somebody will live one place going to get a competent licensed teacher. Somebody is going to live in one area and don't have a license, and have a licensed competent teacher. And because you are from Pear Tree Grove in northern Manchester, any little person can come and teach you.
Well,
so what you're really doing is perpetuating the inequality.
Well, Mr. President, it's because you perceive that the options are binary, 0 or 1. Your perception is that if they don't have Miss Jane, they do have a competent teacher, quote-unquote competent teacher. The reality is if they don't have Miss Jane, they have no teacher. Exactly. And so the negative of that is that a further expansion of the divide within the society, that Miss Jane removes herself and they have nobody to teach them. So the realities that exist is that Miss Jane. let us do a little mathematics. The government has 12 or 15 or 30 school buses. Now, if the government even have 100 school buses, those which the Prime Minister suggests is the maximum that he is targeting at this particular point in time. Just listen first, just a little mathematics. There's way more than 100 communities. Also, there's a time space that you need to get to school. So there's not multiple trips that a bus can likely make. Added to that is that this bus is traveling in the highest time of traffic, which reduces the amount of time that it will be able to move from point A to point B to make multiple trips. So even with the school bus, there will still be communities. I've also added that the parents seem to prefer to have proximity to home based on the child's age, especially at the 3 to 6 age group. Now, again, please, sir, just abide. You have written your speech, you'll be able to give it. So these financial and logical barriers seem to exist within the speech and within the within the bill. Yes. Within the bill. Now, as well, sir, when we consider that a lot of the teachers within the early childhood space are certified by heart, I wonder why there was no space for heart on the teaching council. There was no specific consideration for heart on the teaching council, even though they are the dominant player in our vocational education and in our early childhood qualification. So that seemed to have been a oversight, in our opinion, by not having heart automatically considered. There's nothing in the bill that suggests that the teachers have a right to legal representation paid for. And so, therefore, sorry?
You mean like the police?
Yes. So, yes, but there's a cost. Yes, especially if they get you, Mr. President. Now, if what we're saying here is that a complaint, and we have seen it within the police force where a lot of them that are facing INDECOM are complaining about the cost that they must endure to get this legal representation because you want to be protected. And as you know, many of them who are investigated by INDECOM, they don't get charged. So they were not acting outside of their legal duty. Now, I would presume too that teachers may be carried to the JTC and not be guilty. But that teacher still would have incurred a penalty, which would have been the cost of legal representation. And so if I was a teacher, I would be saying, well, I don't mind, but there must be some subvention, there must be some fund for reasonable representation. Equally, I don't think that the union, the JTA would provide that from what income? For some, right. So what I'm saying, yes. So I'm saying, Mr. President, if this was less punitive and more supportive, then a fund could be created that teachers could get access up to a maximum. Because the teachers not getting a lot of money, you know. If it's one group know that no new taxes is a lie, it's the teachers. Because 40% of their salary was not taxed before this new review of their salary, or 30% of their salary was not taxed. But the little money the teachers getting now, the teacher is now at further risk to have to find lawyers of the repute of Senator Golding, who is charging high fees. Are you charging high fees, Senator Golding? I don't know.
Don't answer.
I am advertising to the teachers the capacity. Yeah. Yes. But Section 57, disciplinary proceedings, teachers may be represented by an attorney or an authorized person. It doesn't specifically speak to the union being such an authorized person, and I think that is within the ambit of the minister. Section 70, the appeal tribunal, teachers may appear in person or be represented. Applies to hearings before this tribunal. No provision for state-funded legal aid, no guarantee of union-provided representation, and again, accept that the teacher may not be able to afford this representation. That is not just a choice of, oh, I can get representation. Our teacher may not have the savings to afford this representation. If you look at the average, category 4 is the average teacher. What's their salary, 2.5 million? If that teacher have 2 or 3 children, finding a lawyer fee is going to be a difficult task. So we believe that that should be there. The council, however, have a budget for hiring their own lawyers, though. So when the teachers depend on me, the village lawyer, the council can hire you, Mr. President, senior King's Counsel. So therefore, it seems to be an unreasonable thing within the bill, and I believe that there should be some consideration. Again, there's no guarantee of union-provided representation. I didn't see that in the bill. And so, sorry. No, meaning the union could be present. There's nothing in it that suggests that the union, not that they're legislating the union's activity, but the bill could have stated that right, it did not. Yes, sir, but because, you understand, we're on the same level. That one over there, lower level. But me, Mr. President.
That one over there. Where?
It's 99 page. If you find one that is there, she can answer that. But if it is in... You don't even know how much page in that bit. You know how much page in that bit? You know how much page? You know, I thought we were on the same level, but you look like a giant that level over there. All right. Make me look again here. Mandatory training. The authority and application. Section 30. I'm sorry for going long, but it's a long bill, sir, and it's an important issue. Section 30, conditions of registration. The council may require a course, impose supervision, restrict teaching levels, limit validity period, or request proof of competence. Can mandate corrective or remedial training at any time and training tied to eligibility to teach. During or after disciplinary proceedings, parts 7 and parts 8, if the teacher reaches professional standards, if the competence is in question under these standards as a condition of reinstatement, post-suspension, or revocation. So training can be mandated for this reason. Council can suspend or revoke if the person refuses to do the training. Teachers may be removed from the register. Employment as a teacher may be blocked. An employer will be notified. Section 24. Section 30 was the first one, and now we're at Section 24. If the teacher refuses, if the teacher refuses to do what was instructed, then they can be blocked from being relicensed. Now, what happens, as I said, if the teacher refuses, that happens. This therefore give a concern because there is no guarantee to it being free, to the continuous development to be free. Indeed, recently, Mr. President, there was a professional development course for basic school teachers, which had a contribution attached to it. So, therefore, while it is mandated for you to participate in professional development, the bill is silent as to whose cost that professional development falls to. And so, therefore, this may be a risk, financial risk to our teachers, because they may be left in a position that they have to pay. I'm reading here, Annual Professional Development Institute, the Early Childhood Commission, and the contribution was $15,000 for early birds and $20,000 for late registration. Now, if we have continued next year it might be 50, but even so, is this 20? So there should be, if it is continuous and it is mandated, there should be some conversation about if there's a cost, what is the maximum 1% of your salary, or there's no cost, government is taking that as its contribution to education. But the bill itself does not speak to that at all, Mr. President. And as I said, we have evidence that there has been cost to to these courses that have been offered, even though they were sponsored by Chase and other entities. So this is a concern that I think teachers must have going forward as well. Within the same, Mr. President, the minister seemed to have too much power. And while it is that this minister is there and seemed to be a kind-hearted and reasonable person, one day the senator at the back might become the minister, God forbid.
God forbid.
And therefore the risk becomes great. But the minister appoints all members, some based on recommendations, no legal requirement to accept nominations, no obligation to explain rejections, no transparency exists within the bill as it relates to what goes forward. The ministerial discretion therefore seems unchecked within the bill, and professional groups can be treated more as symbolic than with any real power, as there is no need to accept. Enables political favoritism, and it weakens trust, we believe, in the bill. The JTC Council can become a tool to the minister or a tool to the decision makers that exist. And so we feel that especially the JTA's recommendation, that there should be reason given if it is rejected, and they should then be asked to make new recommendations, and only their recommendations can be the teachers on the bill. What if you're teaching an overseas exam, like the SATs? The bill still considers that you're a teacher, and also you are covered under that. Now, you have some little institutions that have formulated, like or at least trying to go overseas, they may do SAT prep classes. In fact, we may organize for some persons to do it for them. This bill suggests that that person must be licensed and registered. It's not for CXC, it's not for PEP, it's not for CAPE. But this bill still covers that. So we believe that based on Section 4.1, the Act applies to teachers in schools, tutoring, training programs, includes private tutoring centers, international schools, online platform, and covers things such as the SATs. I don't believe that we have to go that far to cover SAT classes and external examination classes. So I think that is an overreach of the bill. Does the teacher have, yes please, does the teacher have the right to face their accuser? No, teacher don't have a right to face their accuser. Now we can see that exemption if it's a child and if it's at risk or whatever, but any other accuser, the teacher have no right to face the accuser, nor by extension therefore to challenge their credibility. A person can write anything about any teacher and send it in. Section 57 and Section 70, the right to legal representation. Section 56, the right to attend the inquiry. Section 55, the right to view documents. But there's no right to face your accuser. What is natural justice? Mr. President.
That you would have to, I don't think that you would have to legislate that, because there are certain principles of natural justice which apply right across the board.
Yes.
I'm just saying.
Well, Mr. President, I am no lawyer myself.
What you're saying there, if it says the right to documentation, the right to this, the right to that, you're saying that perhaps it should be involved.
Because all of these are a part of natural justice as well. You don't, in the regular legal system, don't you also still have the right to view documents? And it is placed there. Unless that is at risk, especially if it's a child. So I'm saying that that same limitation can be placed, especially because a complainant can easily be a child. But if you are going to repeat those rights in the bill and exclude that one, then it's reasonable to assume as a village lawyer that isn't included. After conversation with a lawyer. Oh, all right, cool. But you do accept what I have seen here. And if there's a reasonable, remember, we're just pointing out what we have seen. If there's a reasonable explanation, we will accept. However, within this context, there are some stipulations of the teacher's rights One of which is to see the documents, which is within natural justice, but not within it, is to face your accuser. And I believe that because you have 57, 70, 56, and 55, which speaks to those rights. Well, yes, I forget that yes, you're on my side on this one. No express right to cross-examine the complainant. Complainant may remain anonymous, and I believe that is unreasonable unless, of course, they need protection. And complainant may submit only a written document. I think that puts great and undue risk on the teachers. They can confront or question their accuser, the lack of transparency, and of course, as I say, they can't speak to the character of their accuser. And remember, this is a service that have inseparabilities, people interacting with people. People interacting with parents that are from the same community, people interacting with other teachers, people interacting with people, and malice can always exist. So we are concerned that that right doesn't exist. Thank you very much. Within it. So we are concerned. I think the bill, Mr. President, reduces flexibility within our schools. A lot of times, our schools have asked even PE teachers to facilitate maths classes because this is the reality of shortage that exists.
Yes,
now,
true.
this bill said that you must be registered to execute the thing. So if I'm registered as a PE teacher, they can't ask me to go and fill into anything at all. And if I'm registered as a maths teacher, they can't ask me to go and fit into anything at all. So that reduces flexibility within the school. And I think that there should be a caveat like a minimum of 90 days or 30 days that allows for, sorry?
But you don't want that.
Mr. Perfection should never be allowed to be the enemy of the good. The current situation that exists have found some schools with no maths teacher. With none. I have had a report from a school last year, a school in St. James, that the students going to do CXC in that year did not have a maths teacher from third form. There are shortages within our schools of vocational teachers. There are shortages within our schools of literacy teachers. There's also days of absence that the principal must jump around and have the people who are present fill in on those days of absence. The bill criminalizes that, reduces the flexibility of that. So is it that I would want a master teacher in every classroom? So the question of what I want is not in this bill. The question is this bill conducive to the reality of our country? In the reality of our country, principals must have a certain level of flexibility to engage others. And the bill could have allowed for a 60-day or 30-day so that that is not immediately criminalized.
Yes. At least.
As the minister says, it's not criminalized, but you can be licensed to teach X. Operating outside of X is a breach of the license. And that breach have some penalties. So unless criminalized have something further than the penalties, maybe it's an incorrect term to say criminalized, but it is penalized. You can be penalized for going outside of your thing. Now, what could it be, especially if you're university educated? If I am licensed to teach accounts, I might be able to fill in maths. And if I'm licensed to teach POB, I might be able to fill in OP. Or maybe do local science and they get one in a bio, and since they're not a bio teacher, this don't allow for that flexibility.
We have shortages
and
that are real.
The minister said that she would be much better aware of it. But the current reading, I would love to know what level. Yes. I'm looking forward. The JCT Act, therefore, is written for ideal conditions and not Jamaica realities. It punishes flexibility based on my reading, criminalizes adaptation, and could harm. I said again, we recommend that there's a 30-day term for cross-subject or cross-level teaching, so that gives them some period of time to find the appropriate teachers to fill in. And let us not forget that many principals are faced with immediate resignations that they could not plan for.
Right.
And especially coming into with the migration, every time we start in school, you have many people still advertising. What do we do in that interim? And what you also do is to give unwilling teachers a escape.
Yeah.
No principal me not do that, coming up, 1.5 million, And they use that as their escape to not to get out of it. So to that we have a problem. When schools must be informed, I think that the bill is lacking there. Section 24, the council, Section 24.5, the council must notify the employer when it orders someone to stop teaching due to lack of license. However, the council have no duty to inform the employer on the commencement of the investigation. And so the principal can be left without no knowledge until the principal gets the report that this person should stop teaching. So the principal, therefore, is the last to come to the table. We believe that must be reviewed. The council must notify the employer when the order is that the person stops. The council must inform the employer when the teacher is removed from the registry. The council must notify both the teacher and the employer of non-renewal. However, there is no requirement to notify the school when a complaint is received. There is no requirement. Complaint may be under investigation without the principal's knowledge, and this delays the school response in oversight and support. The principal should be aware so that the principal can be keeping abreast, can be making decisions, because tomorrow you need a teacher. And that might not be possible if the bill doesn't allow for that. I wish I was on that little committee. I wouldn't have to be going through, but I live sometime. Huh? Big committee. It was a top committee. Top committee, top tier. But I wish I was there. Debating the limits of regulation. Now, what's the scope of the JTA Act, the JTC Act? I believe it's too wide because it goes to private school, it goes to home school. It seemed to just want to be all-encompassing. No. No, come to know what ubiquitous means. Now, who's affected? It affects private individuals, private independent schools, home schools, church-run institutions, one-on-one tutor. It seems a little bit too expensive. Now, again, as I say, one pro, it's national standards and protect all students equally, fine. But it also limits flexibility, it stifles innovation, it threatens hiring freedom. I mean, let us look, for example, at a person who is an engineer at, let's say, Red Stripe, who is willing to go on a Wednesday and assist a school close to Red Stripe in the mechanical engineering or whatever for a limited period of time. You read one page and that is good. Now, that limited period of time means that you have now added a line of resistance to a person that you may need to encourage to participate. But also, what if private schools like AISK want to have an economist come in on a Thursday? That economist now must be a registered teacher. And so, I believe that it extends itself too broadly to that. Now, again, at my own home, my sister shares my environment. We took the we call them yard where you used to have enough house in the yard? Tenement yard. We have taken our tenement yard living from the ghettos, move up on the hill, and 3 of our houses on one piece of land.
I love that.
And among that, we have
children you have?
5, 6 children among that.
Okay. Could be more, though.
I am the maths man. Georgia Crawford, no people don't know is my sister. I'm very proud of her. She is a sociology and Kerry is the linguist. Yes, and Kerry is the linguist. Kerry speaks 3 languages. My family, a top family.
Top.
And then you have Ransford around the back there. Yes, is a legal luminary. If we decide that our homeschool effort includes me teaching all 5 a particular subject, and Georgia teaching all 5 another subject. This bill infringes for what? When there's already a bill that speaks to homeschools having to be approved by the ministry. That competence have to be analyzed in the first place. So a person can't just say me a homeschooler within this. So on what basis me have to teach my child alone everything, and then Georgia teach hers alone everything, and reduce the ability for a community, in this case a family, but any community, to cooperate in homeschooling? I don't believe it is necessary. I see a look of agreement or this, I'm not sure what going on. But to teach your own child seems to gone too far. And I believe that because you already have to qualify, you have to apply. You have to apply to execute that. So I think it risks penalizing people. And because it's a new bill as well, it risks carrying you through the rigors of proving all manner of things before. So while we support the standards, I'm not sure if it should extend past where the disproportionate number of persons participate in the public sector, the vast majority. What is the percentage of persons in home schools? Immaterial. What's the percentage of people in private schools? Well, you have enough prep schools, but when you go to the secondary level, that too becomes relatively immaterial. So I don't know how much this bill must extend to that. But that is a policy decision. That is the right of the government. But we believe that that is going a little bit too far. The bill doesn't speak any at all to working condition. And I heard, I think the minister said that it was a Benz bill or something like that. Somebody was saying it was a top bill. But the realities of the teacher are not equal to what we're seeing here. The minister would have visited many schools and see teachers and students sharing the same type of chair, the metal chair. You'd have visited schools and see the quality of staff rooms. I've seen the government invest in the police stations and the rehabilitation. But even if we don't reach all the school, the quality of the staff room needs direct intervention. Okay. It doesn't speak to that. And I believe that if we are going to carry them to being professionals, and as the bill suggests, the facilities must also be reflective of that. I am close to completion, Mr. President. So the final thing we have to say is we must be careful that this bill doesn't contribute to furthering migration. Yes. Because we are in a position now that we have to be fighting with that as a reality. Well, you know that there's a relationship between risk and reward. And when there's a relationship between risk and reward, higher rewards will make people take greater risk. But many of our teachers also see Jamaica as their fallback if it don't work out, a foreign as well. What we're facing, which is over 1,000, I think in the last 3 years, over 1,000 have migrated.
Per year or total?
Per year. I think 1 year was 1,300. And there's a constant demand. America is very short a teacher. Canada. I see now the Middle East, Dubai has been sending people, recruiting people. More so now. Cayman is active within this space. And some of these people, for example, in the UK, you know that a new teacher receives 2 years of reduced class participation for mentorship. Yes, like, for example, you must teach 40 hours a week. You get 36. You get 10 hours in the first year and 5 hours in the second year for mentorship and competence improvement. Yes, so we have to remain competitive. And this bill, I don't know if we have added enough.
It's seeking to penalize more than facilitate.
It might have pushed some people to say, might as well I leave. Because there is no, as I said, there's no counter plan. There's not this bill. This bill couldn't be a teacher retention plan. But there is no suggested teacher retention plan. And there is a high pressure for teachers to leave. The better teachers are taking up this opportunity in many cases, but particular types of teachers are taking up this opportunity, leading to shortage within the space. Now, again, I've already spoken to the lack of flexibility because of the bill. But that shortage is being exaggerated now by even decisions that we're making to make primary school have specific teaching. Man teach maths and man teach English, and now you're going to have a shortage of maths teachers in the primary school too. Yeah. And as you know, literacy is being recruited dime a dozen. So to that extent, I am fearful that if we make it too punitive, if we make the 1.5, that's too high. If we make it too much of a fear, we might create a push factor to add to the pull factor for migration. Yeah. So, Mr. President, the objectives of the bill, I am 100% in agreement with. I just feel that the bill could be more supportive than punitive in its language, in its nature, and in its recommendations. With that, Mr. President, I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Crawford. Senator Cavan-Gale.
Thank you, President. You know, I'm happy that this bill was not concluded the last sitting. And it's with a deep sense of responsibility, sir, and also optimism for the future of our education system that I rise to speak in support of this Jamaica Teachers Teaching Council bill. A bill, sir, which I had the honor of examining closely as a member of the Joint Select Committee. President, there were some 45 sittings. For some reason, I only managed to attend 44. And, you know, Senator Crawford, I'm sorry that you weren't there as a member. And I believe, you know, when you pick a team to represent in an event, people must be willing to play if you are a team member. And you must pick the right team. You have some members that your team would have picked that only attended 1 or 2 meetings. If you are interested to participate and to effectively make recommendations, you must be willing to play in the game. No. 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 And so, when it comes to playing and winning, you know, there's going to be a certain event because you don't have a good team, so you're not going to win. Mr. President, I want to, during the course of the deliberations, I want to recognize some members of the technical team. Yes. Dr. Winsome Gordon, Miss Anastasia Gordon, I got it right, from the Ministry of Education, Mrs. Dawn Douglas Sherland from OPC. Sometimes we overlook our committee clerk in these proceedings, Mr. Brandon Nash, who, you know, he had to battle between committee members and the technical team. And he not only worked in the chamber, but sometimes in the margin, calling us, getting to understand these things, the challenges to put the thing together. But I also have to recognize the Honorable Favour Williams for her work in leading this committee. President, this proposed legislation is both timely and necessary. It represents a decisive step towards modernizing the governance framework of the teaching profession in Jamaica. It acknowledges the realities of our current education landscape, and it introduces mechanisms to strengthen the standards, ensure accountability, and uplift the profession. President, you know, the bill has its sharp focus in terms of its objective. There are going to be other requirements that are part and parcel of the education system to which you represented, which are critical in nature, but could not have confined it itself in these bills. I believe those issues are issues of great priority that had to be dealt with outside and given the attention that it deserves. President, I want to outline clearly the principal objective and value of this bill and why it is critical for our education system and also national development. It is seeking to enhance the framework for registration, discipline, and assessment of qualifications. So, the bill affirms the responsibility first assigned to the Teaching Service Commission under Section 32 of the Education Act, which is to deal generally with registration, discipline, and the assessment of qualification of teachers. However, this legislation builds on expanding that mandate by providing a more structured and comprehensive system of professional oversight. Not, in your opinion, punitive, but more an expansion of governance, a structured set of rules, and an application of a system that is intended to enhance the framework. The legislation establishes a standards of entry into the teaching profession. What it is seeking to do, is to ensure that individuals seeking to teach in our classrooms, they are qualified, they are competent, and they are fit for service. And President, it provides for continuous assessment of qualifications. We are operating in a global landscape where the profession and the education system will continue to evolve. And so, not just on the point of entry, but throughout the teacher's career, thereby promoting lifelong learning and professional development. President, it introduces what I consider a fair, transparent, and efficient disciplinary process. And I'm going to deal with some of the things that you have raised later on. But this does not only protect the integrity of the profession, but it safeguards the interests of students and the public at large. So what we were contemplating in the process of establishing this legislation is not just about teachers, but a heavy set of the dialogue was around how we protected the students. The establishment of the role of the Jamaica Teaching Council is going to be very, very critical. A cornerstone of this legislation is that formal establishment as a statutory body. The council will be charged with the responsibility to regulate the teaching profession, marking a significant institutional advancement in my mind in how we manage and support educators. So the JTC mandates includes maintaining a register of teachers and instructors and issuing or revoking license based on defined professional standards. It also sets the criteria for certification and licensing. by ensuring that educators meet the required academic and ethical standards. Part of the responsibility of the JISTV, sir, is also monitoring and enforcing compliance. You know, it's not intended for a teacher operating in the profession to fall through the gap. And whilst it was seeking to encompass every teacher and every instructor, sir, the JTC also provide advice and recommendation on matters affecting teaching standards and professional development. So it's not intended for you to just apply for license, apply to register the authorization to teach, and to be left on your own. There's going to be guidance and support of the institutions. Mr. President, the bill, sir, seeks to contribute to the overall improvement in the performance of teachers, instructors, and other education personnel. And this, is, in my mind, is essential if we are to improve the quality of education delivered in our classrooms and to equip our children for future in an increasingly competitive and sometimes uncertain world. So it develops and promotes standards of teaching practice, ensuring the alignment with international benchmarks and emerging. One of the no, you're not going to take the 2 hours that you take and rush the rest of this. 2 hours? Yeah, man, about 2 hours. You know, under Part B of the 3rd schedule, the 6 registered teachers nominated by an association recognized by the minister as representing the majority of teachers in Jamaica. You know, we talked about it, you know. But, you know, when you are a member of a trade union, it takes into consideration that it's a voluntary application of a permanent nature. Now, we never wanted to name the JTA as representing the majority of teachers. Suppose the JTA change its name tomorrow. Suppose there's another trade union that would evolve as a representative. Well, it assumed that that union that is recognized represents the majority of teachers. The bill, you spoke about the 4 individuals to whom shall be registered and licensed teachers. I don't know which interpretation of the bill you are reading, but it spoke to the University of Technology, nominated by the president of that university. You spoke about UWI only. But the bill that is being proposed for our consideration today, the version that I have, speaks to the University of Technology, nominated by the president of that university. That is under the 3rd schedule, Part B, which constitutes the composition of the board of the Teaching Council. You also spoke about 4 nominees of persons who are body that the minister recognizes as representatives of religious denominations. Now, these took into consideration those institutions that are owned by a religious denomination. Give, for example, the school that I went to is owned by the Church of God, Arden. I don't know the denomination that you referenced owns any of the institutions that are now operating. So it took into consideration at the time, but at the time that the legislation was being contemplated. So is it churches? Yeah, it's churches. It's churches. But which owns the institutions. You spoke also the instructor. Those schools that you might want a music teacher, but somebody music supporter. You referenced it. But these would have been contemplated as instructors. Yeah? The veranda teacher that you spoke about, I went to a school. My first school when I was about age 3 or 4 was in a carport at Lady Musgrave Road, Miss Mead School. She, in my mind, would have been a private tutor. And the bill captures that. Now, you spoke about your responsibility as a teacher and where you go every Saturday. Yeah? And under Clause 4(2), the Act does not apply to a person who teaches on an ad hoc, voluntary basis without pay, reward, or other consideration, and a person who teaches his or her own child and no other child in an approved home education program. What I would suggest to you, my friend, because we want you to continue to be a teacher, you need to apply for the authorization to teach. No, man, it's not a line of resistance. Don't see an application for order to be a line of resistance. It's a pursuit of good guidance and governance. The bill, what the bill intended to do is to put in line some proper governance that can be managed. Now, you raise questions about Part 4, the restriction on teaching. And in the margin, it refers to the prohibition against practicing as a teacher without being registered and licensed or authorized, or employing a person who is not registered and licensed or authorized. Now, what we wanted to ensure is that in the line of the profession, all of the teachers that are operating in the institutions, they have been granted a license to teach, and they have been granted an authorization to teach. What it contemplated was where a person under subsection 2 does not comply with the direction within a specified time. So in the first instance, 24(2) says where the council is satisfied that a person is practicing in the contravention of subsection 1, that they were never granted the license, and then they were never granted the authorization. The council shall by notice in writing direct the person to make the application for the license or authorization to teach within 21 working days of the receipt of the notification of the contravention. So you don't have the authorization to teach. You don't have the license to teach. The council would have identified that and said to you, go get this within 21 days. It says further that where the person under subsection 2 does not comply with the direction within the time specified under the subsection, the council shall by notice in writing give the person another 21 days. So, You can't, as a medical practitioner or as an engineer, as an attorney, apply your trade without the certification. What we are doing is improving the standard of the profession and giving the opportunity over a period of time for such compliance. I'm of the view that that is good governance. So it says in 4, where the person under subsection 3 does not comply with the direction within the specified under the subsection, the council shall by notice in writing direct the person to forthwith cease to practice as a teacher. Now, it assumed, that you got the notification, opportunity was afforded, you got an extension of another 21 days. Now, if you never acted on that, Mr. President, then the institution cannot hold itself unaccountable. Because what would happen if something was to happen with that person that is not in compliance? That institution would have been exposed to risk. And that is what we are trying as part of the pursuance of this legislation to remedy. And so you mentioned that the principal don't know. But a copy of the notice under subsection 4 shall be served on the employer. And upon receipt of said notice, the employer shall forthwith ensure that the person who is the subject of the notice cease to practice as a teacher until that person produces evidence that he or she has been granted a license or an authorization to teach. So it gives, again, additional afforded opportunity. So, President, you made reference in 57, under the right of representation. But the 57 that I have, it says a party to an inquiry may be represented by a body which represents the majority of teachers in Jamaica. It further says an attorney at law or any other person or may elect to be self-represented. It is without opportunity for representation. But again, you weren't there, my friend. No, man. You understand representation. A registered trade union that represents any grouping, the people pay dues, What additional funding they need for representation? If that, and I know that the JTA is an effective trade union, so the teachers need not worry about the extent of their representation. Now, look, even my 80-year-old institution that I lead, if there is a member that decides, having paid us their dues over a defined period, wishes to go there and get an attorney to represent them in a matter, and they come to me and they say, we don't want you to represent you, We want, and we feel compelled, given the circumstances, of an attorney, even though we know we're better than much attorneys. Yes. It is only fair, Senator Crawford, for them to go deal with that cost, because that's a voluntary choice. But you see, you have the opportunity to become a member. And once you become a member, you are eligible for certain representation. People must not stand on the fringes and expect representation and don't want to pay the dues. No, man. And teachers choose not to be a member for varying reasons. But the challenge is when they get into trouble, they go seek the representation. No, man, don't. What I don't want you to seek to do, Senator Crawford, is to play misinformation against the intention of this legislation in the public space. The bill never intends to speak on some of the things that you have contemplated in your mind as an opinion. The bill was clear in its objectives and reasons. And look, one of the fundamental reasons for these kinds of expansive legislations is, and I'm going to recommend this, that, during the period of review, we have to see what works from what don't work. And we have to have periodic assessments that when it comes to the period of review, those recommendations are able to be placed on the table. It's not a perfect world. And look, I agree with some of the recommendations and suggestions that you would have seen, And again, I say, as a teacher, you should have been there, but your team never picked the right team. Yeah. Now, Mr. President, the world of work has changed dramatically. And we are now preparing for students for careers that do not yet exist, for technologies not yet invented, and for challenges we're only beginning to understand. In this rapidly evolving global environment, sir, our education system must be responsive and future-ready. That begins with having, I will wait until you come back and don't get distracted. Well-trained, adaptable, and qualified educators in every classroom. Mr. President, educators who can cultivate creativity, educators who can create creativity, critical thinking, and resilience in their students. And to achieve this, we must have a robust regulatory framework that ensures that teachers are properly vetted and trained, professionally licensed, and held at high standards, continuously evaluated and supported, disciplined where necessary, in a fair and transparent manner. And I'm of the profound view that between clause 50 and 71, we sought to prescribe the fairest and transparent manner in dealing with discipline. And the two trades, your colleague who sit behind the seat that you hold today, attended and represented a lot of these issues. Yes, Senator Lambert Brown. So you have to give him some credit, man. No, man, look at me can't bully. And bully Lamy. Mr. President, loyalty and commitment from teachers are the foundation upon which a strong education system is built. And so when teachers are committed to their profession, they do more than just instruct. They inspire, they mentor, they lead, they influence and shape minds, values, and prospect for generations. And so, sir, a committed teacher is more likely to go the extra mile to support struggling students. A committed teacher, sir, can be innovative in lesson delivery. A committed teacher will embrace new technology and methodologies and advocate for school and student improvement. A committed teacher will always demonstrate to be the model of ethical behavior and integrity. Well, Mr. President, why speak of committed teacher? When I was in, and everybody had the opportunity to speak of their own personal experience. When I was in grade 3, at primary school, in the 70s, sir,
Damien, Senator Crawford, don't ask for 1 more minute because we are winding up this thing, you know.
So, in the context of fairness and with the capacity of the speaker, we ask that he be given sufficient time to complete as well.
You hear people ask the time?
Thank you very much. Members should have heard the question. Those in favor?
You see?
Hey, take the picture before Mr. Daniel.
can I,
Take the picture.
can I use that? But you see, you have to leave it right there. Mr. President, in grade 3, I was ill and hospitalized for 8 weeks. It was in the last semester that I returned to school. One Mrs. Shirley Jackson, my then grade 3 primary school teacher, she hugged me, sir, and she placed me in a special corner. I didn't know why. It wasn't the naughty corner. But what she did when she placed me in that special corner, because my mother never even knew what happened to me after grade 3. And she placed me in that special corner. And she gave me private tutoring. It never asked a license at that time. It asked a commitment and loyalty and a heart. What that did is that when she finished with me in that last semester, I ended up skipping grade 4 and going on to grade 5 to get ready for common entrance. No, she passed 3 years ago. Shirley Jackson. That teacher will always be in my heart. And so, loyalty to the profession, sir, contributes to the stability in schools. Institutional memory. And a consistent culture of excellence. However, sir, for teachers to remain loyal and committed, they must be treated as professionals, with the appropriate recognition and respect and autonomy. Mr. President, they must be fairly and reasonably compensated. And if we are demanding this level of certification, this level of qualification, this level of accountability, there's an added value to compensation that we are going to have to continuously address. It now places the profession at a greater level of value. And they must be given the opportunities for ongoing professional development. Mr. President, one of the things that we have to treat with, and this is something that, you know, if I have time to deal with, and we're going to deal with it in terms of the workplace, sir, we take for granted the physical and mental aspect to which our teachers have to undergo. And so we have to, as part of the conditions of employment, deal with the question and protect against burnout of our teachers. So we have to deal with the question of manageable class size and the workload. And so I don't support this idea that you have in the institution a teacher that going to have to backfill for something else. The school, yeah, that's why you have school boards now. We must know the type of composite that we're placing on school boards. We must pick key individuals and personnel to satisfy the component of school boards in the delivery of their work. And we must always include teachers in the decision-making of the education system. The decision can't take place from up or somewhere else. And so when teachers feel valued, respected, and supported, they stay. They don't migrate. They thrive. And when teachers thrive, the students will excel. Communities prosper, and the nation will progress. Finally, Mr. President, this legislation seeks to restore and elevate the professional status of teaching in Jamaica. And so we cannot ask teachers to transform lives and prepare future leaders if the profession is not afforded the dignity, support, and the structure that it deserves. And so by our doing today, regulating the profession, and this in my mind now is akin to law in medicine and engineering, we are sending a strong signal of the intention of the development of this profession. Yeah. And teachers are not only essential, but professionals who must be equipped and supported and, President, respected. So, sir, the bill, not perceived or created in the fiction of some person's imagination, that it's an extension of being punitive in nature. It is a bill. See if Senator Crawford, look up at me when I'm saying this. It is a bill that is intended to be progressive in nature. And you said you said it. You supported tenets of the bill. And so for the prosperity of the people, I had to say that. The bill represents a comprehensive and progressive response to the needs of the Jamaican education system. It is about building a framework of accountability. It is about encouraging high performance and ensuring that our students who are the heartbeat of our nation, that they are guided by educators of the highest quality. And so, sir, we owe it to our children, we owe it also to our teachers and the country to pass this legislation and lay a foundation for an education system that can drive growth, innovation, and national development. Mr. President, I want to urge all my colleagues of this honorable chamber to give their full support to this piece of legislation. May it please you.
May I take this opportunity to say thank you very much, Senator Gale, for a comprehensive presentation, much appreciated. Just to say, Senator Professor Morris, lovely to see you. We missed you in standing orders today. I didn't get an excuse. I wonder if you were not up to scratch, but it's nice to see you. And you are in I noticed that you are in your KC colors today, but to the best of my knowledge, you did not attend either of the institutions on North Street. Senator Morgan, 1 minute, please. Senator Morgan, 1 minute. Don't put on your pads yet. Yes, you had one brother that went to KC. 2. Okay, good. Well, the outfit is very very fetching. Senator Hill, I have I'm talking to Senator Hill. I have a decision to make, you know. No, you can't address you there. I need to determine how many speakers you have left. It's 107. We have a large contingent of persons from the ministry who I would like to release. If I can. Eh? I know. So you are advising me to take Morgan now and hopefully finish with the minister and get it out of the way? Because we'll be able to do the... So I'm going to ask the staff if they can start to revolve so that we don't have to take the break and we can just finish it. If that's okay, Madam Clerk. And while we are at it, it's 120 somewhere. Can I have the 120 motion?
I'm asking, Mr. President, that since it's approximating 1:20, that the business of the Senate be extended, the time for the Senate meeting to be extended for such that the minister...
Absolutely, that we be allowed to sit beyond 1:20. Members would have heard 1:30. Members would have heard the question. Those in favor? No, I'm not trying to restrict anybody, you know, but everybody get the picture, right? That if
brevity, Mr. President.
Brevity.
That is it.
Thank you very much, Senator Morgan. And you know, if Senator Crawford, if you leave the minister the senator while he's presenting it, you can.
Mr. President, other speakers would have indicated that this particular piece of legislation has had a very lengthy run-up, and it is indeed so. I too must add my words of commendation to the technical team at the ministry. I must commend in particular Dr. Gordon and her team at the JTC, the Permanent Secretary, Dr. Troop, and indeed her predecessors, because there would have been a number of permanent secretaries who would have had a hand in this piece of legislation. And I must single out my dear friend and colleague at the ministry's lawyer-in-chief, Senior Assistant Attorney General, Anastasia Gordon-Jones. I must also, Mr. President, salute the Jamaica Teachers Association and our hard-working teachers who are important and indispensable partners in this process. And there are other stakeholders as well, including the National Parent Teachers Association, ably represented, of course, by our good friend and KC alum, Mr. Stuart Jacobs. The Joint Select Committee, Mr. President, did considerable work over several weeks and months, and they must appropriately be acknowledged. It is either providence or fate, Mr. President. Between 2008 and 2011, work on this piece of legislation was in its infancy. I happened to have served in the Ministry of Education then as an advisor to the then minister. And in more recent times, him the way you want to be but will never be. And in more recent times, I have served as a technician in the ministry where I actually wrote the cabinet submission and indeed the legislation committee submission having to do with this very piece of legislation. And here I am as a legislator appropriately contributing to the debate on said bill. Mr. President, in August 2023, on his installation as the president of the Jamaica Teachers Association, Mr. Leighton Johnson opened with some remarks that I found very instructive. And I'm quoting Leighton Johnson as follows. As the son of two educators, I realized very early the importance of education. However, with my father's exit from the classroom to go into chemical sales and then into insurance, simply to provide for his family, I realized equally that the life of a teacher would be a struggle, and I wanted nothing to do with it. I didn't choose teaching. Teaching chose me. And as cliched as this phrase is, my story is the true embodiment of that statement. I grew up attending school in Manchester, and several careers piqued my interest. For each of these careers that crossed my mind, whether a sound system selector, a bus driver, a mechanical engineer, a pilot, or a soldier, I would race home with excitement to my mother, and I would say, I know what I'm going to be. One thing for certain, that for each of the careers that I chose, my mother would encourage me and say, be the best at it. Be the best bus driver. Be the best sound system selector, the best pilot. Eventually, I settled on media and communications, and I worked at that. Eventually, I even passed the CARIMAC entrance test to attend the University of the West Indies, and I eagerly anticipated acceptance. September morning came, but alas, that was not to be. To date, I have received no word from them. And with feelings of confusion and anxiety, and from a steamy, heated conversation with my father, I was taken to Church Teachers College on September 3, 1997. Garth, referring to the incumbent principal of Church Teachers College, Leighton Johnson said, Garth, I remember it as though it was yesterday. Today, I honor my parents, IT and Leila Johnson, who insisted that I would not stay home and chose teaching for me. I have absolutely no regrets with that decision, because here I am, today, Leighton Ray Anthony Johnson, principal of the Mushat High School and your 59th president of the Jamaica Teachers Association. When my then fiancé and I watched this investiture event 2 years ago, I had no idea I would have been here speaking in this debate. But so instructive I found the observation. It resonated with me, and it is as though I committed it to my memory, so that in contributing to this debate, I could have gone back to that tape and transcribed it, because it is very important, Mr. President. For many of our teachers, teaching is not their preferred career. Teaching chose them. They didn't choose teaching. But the foremost takeaway from this remark from Leighton Johnson, Mr. President, is that there is honor in doing whatever we do to the best of our ability, and as diligently and as professionally as we can. Teaching is a noble profession, although at times it may seem unfulfilling, unrewarding, and thankless. Mr. President, there is no greater feeling than running into a student, even after many, many years, and they can relate a story or an experience they would have had with you as their classroom teacher. I had that experience. I have that experience from time to time, having served as a graduate pre-trained teacher, a teacher at the Denhamtown High School several years ago of English language and English literature. My aim this afternoon, Mr. President, is to situate teaching in today's national landscape and locate the context within which we're operating here in Jamaica in this debate on this most vaunted and long overdue Jamaica Teaching Council bill. Mr. President, I would have been observing the debate so far, and it is clear that while there are some folks who are in the business of finding solutions to the problems and challenges that confront us, there are those among us who are in the business of finding a problem for every solution. Mr. President, every so often, my good friend, Senator Crawford, laments the state of student outcomes in the country. He laments education outcomes. And we are all agreed that there is considerably more, yes, that needs to happen in relation to student outcomes. But it cannot be, Mr. President, that even while we lament educational outcomes in the country, we would attend upon the debate on this critical piece of legislation and not make that critical link between the thrust and the mischief this bill is seeking to correct and the very educational outcomes we're lamenting. Indeed, so much of the observations you would have made seek to and are in furtherance of perpetuating the very ills that exist in the system at present, the very ills that we're seeking to correct. We're seeking to usher in greater levels of accountability. Mr. President, as Senator Gale said just now, one of the things we must never allow to escape us in this debate, and when we consider the Jamaica Teaching Council bill, is that there is a particular duty of care that we owe to the children of Jamaica. And it is based on that duty of care why we're seeking to establish teaching as a profession, to professionalize the activity that is teaching, and have the JTC and indeed this piece of legislation serving as the guardians, as it were, of the profession. Mr. President, the Jamaica Teaching Council bill, as does the council as a secretariat, seeks to change the dynamic in many respects. It seeks to change the esteem in which the teaching profession is held. It seeks to change the psyche, the mindset of the persons who go into the profession. Indeed, this bill and the JTC as a secretariat seeks to raise the profile of teaching in Jamaica. The doctors have the medical council. The lawyers have the general legal council. The nurses have the nursing council. Engineers, the Jamaica Institution of Engineers. The architects, you name it. It is now high time, Mr. President, that our beloved and respected teachers have their teaching council. After all, teaching is as esteemed and important to nation building and national development as is medicine, law, engineering, and architecture. Mr. President, while there is a clear thrust and a framework prioritizing teacher accountability, the Jamaica Teaching Council as a secretariat, as is the bill before us this afternoon, is about support, capacity building, and development, not intimidation, not the oppression of our teachers, not the victimization of our teachers, not marginalization of our teachers, or indeed the recrimination of teachers. Some years ago, when mention was made by the JTC of teacher appraisals, for example, there was much anxiety, much trepidation, and among some stakeholders and onlookers, there was even hysteria. As many stakeholders have come to recognize and understand, teacher appraisals, as superintended by the Jamaica Teaching Council, is aimed at the development of our teachers. It is a developmental tool, a development instrument. It is not for intimidation, oppression, victimization, marginalization, or recrimination. Mr. President, the bane of the teaching profession's existence here in Jamaica is impecunious remuneration. Globally, teaching is not as competitively remunerated as it should. That's just a reality globally. In fact, Germany distinguishes itself as one of the jurisdictions in which teachers are well paid and are regarded, certainly in terms of their pay, as being the most important of the professions. It is from the teachers that we get every other profession. Now, I deem it important to focus attention in this debate, Mr. President, on the things that have been serving to make teaching here in Jamaica that much more rewarding, fulfilling, and lucrative, especially as it relates to emoluments and conditions of service. And this is of some moment, given the challenges we have been having over decades with teacher migration. And you would have heard Senator Crawford's presentation touching on it, the perpetual challenge we have as it relates to teacher retention. Senator Gale just now laments and warns against burnout of teachers, and that's a salient point. And it is for that reason and within that context that the ministry, some years ago, would have taken it onto itself, based on representation made by teachers as well, to build out a lesson plan bank and try to make the business of lesson planning that much more structured and that much more accessible to teachers, because we know that one of the contributors to teacher burnout is just the sheer load they carry, not just in the immediate teaching and learning environment, but also in preparing for instruction, i.e. lesson planning. So while Senator Crawford attends upon a bar perhaps on a Saturday, and in other social contexts, many a teacher has to attend. Yes, many a teacher have to attend to lesson planning on their weekends and in otherwise family time. And we are very, very mindful of that. Mr. President, the number one complaint and push factor out of the profession is compensation. What has bedeviled us in this country is that for far too long, the conditions that would enable us to do better by our teachers have eluded us. I speak in this case of high inflation and, of course, low wages, because you have to make the link between how the economy is faring and how government is able to respond in terms of compensating public teachers. Thankfully, Mr. President, the Jamaica over which this Andrew Holness-led Jamaica Labour Party government is presiding is increasingly emerging as a much better Jamaica. We are a strong, stable, and resilient Jamaica, certainly stronger, more stable, and more resilient than where we have come from in recent decades. Key macroeconomic indicators, Mr. President, are encouraging, and they underscore the better position we're in as a country. The things happening in the national economy and the country as a whole serve to benefit and positively impact our teachers. So yes, when we speak of 10 years of no net new taxes and 8 consecutive budgets of no new taxes, our nation's teachers are the beneficiaries of that, and those serve as another reason for them to be retained here in Jamaica and serve the children of Jamaica. When we speak of moderate inflation, because quite frankly, Mr. President, inflation is a tax on people's disposable income. And when you have inflation remaining moderate, being in the order of 4.7%, and more recently it went up to what, 5%, still within the band, the targeted band by the central bank, you know that the economic management of the country impacts how our nation's teachers fare in their own pockets. And we have had several years of a stable dollar, Mr. President, not to mention the recently announced NHT provisions, where our teachers are able to, as a co-applicant, access not 15 million again, but 17 million. As an individual applicant, the loan ceiling is up from 7.5 million to 9 million. And our nation's teachers, if they are 3 applicants, are now able to access not 19 million, but 21 million. And this speaks, Mr. President, to efforts being made by government to do better by our nation's teachers, even in circumstances where the actual remuneration to the teacher are not necessarily at levels that we would have wanted as a country to afford them as professionals doing yeoman service in this country. It is not surprising, therefore, Mr. President, that relative to any other time in Jamaica's history, you have more teachers owning their own home today, and more teachers, yes? More teachers owning motor vehicles today, Mr. President. When you go to a school nowadays, Senator Crawford, when I attended primary school, Mr. President, and when Damien would have attended primary school, we used to play scrimmage and salada kick in the parking lot at the school. The parking lot at schools now, Mr. President, have all kinds of vehicles owned by our nation's teachers situated there. That is it. And Mr. President, you can't find space to play scrimmage. You can't find space to play catch-a-shubi. And you have to be careful how you bat ball now in the schools, because you don't want to mash the teacher's car glass. Stop talking rubbish, man. Stop talking rubbish. When motor vehicles were liberalized in the early 1990s, on account of premature liberalization of the Jamaican dollar, what we had was a cataclysmic situation where interest rates had to go extremely high in order to mop up liquidity. And with interest rates going high, you also had inflation going high, and teachers like my aunt and several other teachers across Jamaica had to suck salt through wooden spoon. They, relative to today, were not able to own motor vehicles. Yes, many teachers scrambled to even find the fare to take them to school, especially when we got to the Ben Johnson part of the month. Yes, when we got to the Ben Johnson part of the month. You see, when you're a tap and Harris, you don't even know what Ben Johnson means. Yes? You have a Ben Johnson part of the month. Ask the technicians about it. Make Janice tell you, probably she will know. Mr. President, yeah, man, on account of his goats, his more recent largesse. Mr. President, we are mindful of the deficits that exist at many of our school plans. And that is why focused attention, tell him for call back, man. That is why focused attention is being placed on remedying, addressing in a serious way some of these deficits. One of the approaches this government has been using is to expand the spaces at schools by building new additional classroom blocks. Sixth form blocks, for example, in order to take more of our schools off shift. A commitment of the government at present is in relation to 50 high schools, several of them being technical high schools, in relation to the outfitting and renovation of their laboratories, Mr. President, because we know that the state of the school plant and the resourcing of the schools are important to educational outcomes and remedying what is happening in relation to what some band about as the apartheid in education system. Mr. President, I'm a disciple of oldest man. So we're unrelenting in that regard. Zin? All right. He's Iscariot. Mr. President, one of the things that would have happened in recent times as a result of the progressive outlook of this government and the forward-thinking disposition of the government has to do with instituting an additional period of maternity leave, a provision from which many of our nation's teachers benefit, as well as an instituting of paternity leave. Our teachers benefit from these things, and they serve as bases on which retention is more likely in enterprise Jamaica. Mr. President, incentives for student teachers and the children or dependents of teachers also serve to remedy one of the biggest mischiefs we have in the profession at present in relation to teacher migration. And of course, it serves to foster teacher retention. The recently announced SLB reform, or I should rather say, the continued advance as it relates to reform of the Students' Loan Bureau. 2 budgets ago, we would have reformed SLB by removing the guarantor requirement for wards of the state. And then we moved to removing the guarantor requirement for children on path. And then, Mr. President, the government has since moved to remove the guarantor requirement for all borrowers at the SLB. And in addition to that, of course, because remember now, we're talking about things that the student teachers are benefiting from, and of course, the dependents of teachers. Yes? So their children and wards who are in their care. So just to be very clear, when we have reformed the SLB by now attending to not just tuition, but living expenses, providing a laptop computer, and of course, attending to books and other supplies. That is game-changing. Other reasons for teachers to remain here in Jamaica, Mr. President. And of course, there are a suite of benefits, a suite of incentives through Heart NSTA Trust that our teachers have been benefiting from. So while some complain about the conditions that are causing some teachers to look further afield, the truth is that through Heart NSTA Trust, we have a LIFT program where the beneficiaries, the children, the dependents of our nation teachers are benefiting from. LIFT, of course, denotes learning and investment for transformation. There is also the CARE program through Heart, Community Action for Rewarding Engagement. And I need not mention the STEM scholarships and, of course, the training in the use of AI tools, the prompt engineering course. Mr. President, in-service teachers also are benefiting from actions of the ministry and indeed the government as a whole. There's increased support to our in-service teachers. There's capacity building and development through the Jamaica Teaching Council and the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information. There are earmarked professional development days. So for example, when the students go off on midterm break, as they will do when Labor Day comes up, get it? Labor Day. The teachers, yes? often have to engage in professional development. So they have a down day, but in addition to the public holiday, they have a day set aside and earmarked as Professional Development Day. And of course, the JTA is to be commended as well, Mr. President, because the JTA also treats considerably with professional development. In fact, they have a committee dubbed the Professional Advancement and Teacher Welfare Committee, where they focus attention on development of teachers as critical professionals in this country. Now, Mr. President, the National College on Educational Leadership serve an important purpose. They serve to complement what we're doing with this bill in terms of various programs and offerings. Now, just a quick caution, Mr. President. We live in a global village, and we operate in a free market economy. We are cognizant that from time to time, our Jamaican brothers and sisters will avail themselves of opportunities abroad. I feel compelled, however, Mr. President, to reiterate a word of advice, some would say caution, to those who are considering migration. One of the things that often escape some folks, Mr. President, is that a dollar is a dollar in any country. So when a Jamaican teacher has a recruiter or a prospective recruiter attending upon them and pointing out the $5,000 that they may be earning each month, it would be important and instructive for that teacher, that prospective recruit, to consider the cost of living in South Carolina where they are being courted to go off to. So just to be very clear, though you may be earning 4,500 United States dollars per month as you take up training in South Carolina, five minutes. I must also editorialize by saying capacity.
Sufficient time?
No, man.
Yes,
5
yes,
minutes.
yes.
I just said 5 minutes.
But 10 minutes is suggested to be sufficient. So what we will recommend sufficient time to complete.
Okay, thank you very much. Members should have heard the
That's what I'll go against from the second.
question. Those in favor?
On the
Thank you, Mr. President. And as we wrap up the observations in relation to the bill, so, Mr. President, when you're in South Carolina, you have to consider the rent. Rent for a very modest dwelling or very modest residence in the United States can easily run you $1,500 to $2,000 United States dollars per month. When you're in South Carolina, where you would find lodging relative to where the school is located, you will require a motor vehicle. And you have to consider the car note. That can run anywhere between $400 United States dollars and $600. And so the message to our teachers, some of whom are contemplating migration, is to be very mindful that a dollar is a dollar in any country. And the truth of the matter is that when you consider the overheads in the United States, in terms of the cost of rent, the cost of health care, and of course, the cost of your car note, because in some areas, you will not necessarily be able to take a bus to attend to school or take the train to attend to the school where you are placed or the school where you work. And so, Mr. President, I am very delighted that at long last, this bill has come. We are finalizing our debate in this chamber in relation to the Jamaica Teaching Council bill, and I look forward to the game-changing impact it will have on educational outcomes. Because while there are those who closed their good eye and read the bill through their bad eye, there are those of us who look forward to, yes, the game-changing impact of this piece of legislation and holding our teachers accountable and having our teachers feel better about their profession and establishing the teaching profession as one of choice. With those few words, Mr. President, I commend the Jamaica Teaching Council.
Well said. Thank you very much, Senator Morgan. Thank you very much, Senator Morgan. Senator Golden Campbell. Minister Morris, Morris Dixon. Minister, would you give me a minute, please? Thank you, Senator Golden.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, my contributions this afternoon are going to be brief. I am in full support of the scheme devised by the Teaching Council Act of 2025, and I must commend the members of the Joint Select Committee, the Minister and her team, the former Minister of Education, now Minister of Finance, the Honorable Favor Williams, the Permanent Secretary and her entire ministry staff, and not the least of which our Legal Reform Department and our Parliamentary Council Office and technical persons. Senator Crawford raised some concerns about this concept of competence to teach. And while the word competence has its own ordinary meaning, Senator Crawford, as I reviewed the bill, I took your concerns in earnest, but I noted that the framework in terms of that, how we assess competence to teach, will in fact be informed by the professional standards that are promulgated by the Council under Section 10. However, I thank you for raising the concern, because in my first review of the bill, I did not note something which is something I wish to commend to the Minister, which is the requirement for those professional standards to be fulsomely published, i.e. published to the people. So under Section 10, while the Council has the power to, after consultation, develop, maintain, adapt, or incorporate and apply professional standards for teacher competence and practice, there did not appear to me, and I haven't had anyone draw it to my attention, that there was any provision for those standards to come before Parliament, so Parliament had knowledge of those standards. And so I propose to do this in the committee, and I have had discussions with Minister's team just to propose that these standards be formalized through ministerial order that would usually and ordinarily come before the Parliament, so that we would have sight, and the people would also have sight through the Parliament of what the competence is measured by. I have a concern, Minister, that I wish to translate, and in my preparation I sought the counsel of principals, senior teachers in the classroom still practicing, I didn't rely on just the fact that I come from teachers. But I will just indicate there is a little concern about the ability to, or the capacity of all schools, because some will have the capacity to do the supervising of the persons who are under this license and registration scheme. I know now there's already a system in place in schools where principals and the administration manage their teachers, and if there are disciplinary matters, there is some process for that. But I just wanted to translate the concern. I didn't dismiss it, so that we just ensure that our schools have the resources and the capacity to be able to do the monitoring and to ensure that the kind of supervision that is required, for instance, under Section 32B, they are equipped to do. And then finally, under said Section 30, I do wish to propose a small amendment to change the phrase "satisfy the council" to "satisfy itself," to make it absolutely clear that the council, by imposing the conditions on registration and license or authorization to teach, is satisfying itself, and not another body. That a person meets the eligibility requirements. So as you read it now with council repeated twice, it sort of begs the question, well, how is the council doing this? And then the council is satisfying itself at the same time. But it is within the power of the council to do this as set out in Section 30. And again, I have, with Minister Dixon Morris's permission, had discussions with her team on that. And with those proposals and suggestions, I make one final one at Section 51 under the investigation, disciplinary inquiry, and action and powers of investigation. The council, in conducting an investigation, can refer the complaint to its own professional practice and conduct committee, and that committee will determine whether or not the complaint should be referred to an independent investigator. As I reviewed it, it sort of popped into my mind that perhaps we should have some standards for that independent investigator. I wouldn't propose that those be included in this bill, but I just bring it to the minister's attention for perhaps something that comes later, perhaps within the auspices of the council or as regulations when the minister is prescribing those regulations later on. And with that, Mr. President, I really have to now say that as the granddaughter of teachers, as the daughter-in-law of a teacher who happened to have been my vice principal at high school, as a daughter of a teacher, because my mother spent several years in the classroom. Which one? I'll let you say that, Damien. Thank you. I am so pleased to see the work that has been put into this, and so pleased to see the scheme that this bill is introducing, because this is really going to help us to distinguish those in our profession who are earnestly trying to teach our children and to give them and elevate them with this sort of professional title and professional certification. So I thank you very much, Minister, for championing this, and for your predecessor for having done some of the run-up work as well, and all those who have been involved in the development of this bill throughout the ages. May it please you, Mr. President, I commend the Teaching Council to act with the proposals and suggestions I have made.
Thank you, Senator Golden Campbell. Minister?
Mr. President, I thank all my colleagues for their participation in this debate. And I also want to again thank all members of the Joint Select Committee, especially Cavan Gale, Senator Gale, who attended 44 of 45 meetings. And he was very active. And also, of course, most importantly, the Honourable Favour Williams, who so ably led the Joint Select Committee process. I also want to thank all the members, which didn't include Senator Crawford. I don't know how you never were on this committee. I don't know. Senator Ransford Braham, Senator Natalie Campbell Rodriguez, Senator Lambert Brown, Senator Gabriella Morris, the Honourable Robert Nestor Morgan, Honourable Floyd Green, the Honourable Juliet Cuthbert Flynn, Miss Tova Hamilton, Miss Rhoda Moore Crawford, Dr. Angela Brown Burke, Mrs. Natalie Nita Garvey, Mr. Robert Miller. All of those individuals were on that Joint Select Committee and worked on this bill. I have to also thank the technical team, and in the well we have them, Dr. Troop, our Permanent Secretary, our CEO, Dr. Terry Ann Thomas Gale, Dr. Gordon, Anastasia Gordon, Don Douglas Shoreland, for all of their work. During this process, Mr. President, 15 organizations made submissions, and that included our National PTA Association and also the JTA. And we have Stuart Jacobs with us here today. We're very happy to have him here as we are passing this. And when I opened, we had the president of the Jamaica Teachers Association here with us, whose input was very central to this bill. And so this bill is not the government's bill. This bill is all of our bill. This bill is really Jamaica's bill. I'm going to respond to some of the questions, and I'm so glad that I had the support of Senator Gale and also Senator, who also worked on the cabinet submission and all of those other details beforehand, being able to answer some of the questions that you have. And so I'm going to go from the questions from the opening when Senator Bunting had raised some questions. Senator Bunting had asked about clarity on the transition period for the Act and when the provisions would come in effect. And if you look at Part 11 of the bill, page 61 in particular, it speaks to the transitional provisions. And it states very clearly that they come into place in around the appointed day, and it specifies what appointed day means, and this refers to the date set by the minister for the Act or specific provisions of it. So different parts of the Act can come into place at different times. Importantly, teachers already recognized under the Education Act by virtue of their existing qualifications as of whatever that appointed day will be deemed registered or enrolled under this Act. And so that's very clearly specified in Section 81. These individuals must then, though, apply to the JTC for a license or authorization to teach within 24 months. So they have 2 years after the Act comes into place to regularize themselves. So we're not saying the day this comes into place you have to be registered. No. We have given a 2-year period. So if you're already a teacher in the system, you are there, nothing is going to change for you within that 24-month period. And then I will note also another question that came from Senator Bunting, and he had asked if the exceptions that were granted for someone who is homeschooling their own child, if that's not a loophole in what we are doing. And I would note that a lot of people don't understand the homeschooling environment and actually the regulations around it. It's not just someone doing a thing. It's actually quite formalized. So a formal process of application and inspection and approval is set up for homeschools. So you actually have to apply for it. It's regulated under the independent schools regulations and monitored by the independent schools unit under the Division of School Services. So the approved curriculums or curriculum is to be delivered, and the students' records are kept and they're inspected by the Ministry of Education. And it also looks at the nutrition that's in place for the child in the homeschool, what level of play and psychosocial support is offered, and all of that is monitored. And then they're also assessed. And so in terms of the homeschooling environment, there is already a framework around which we are making sure that these homeschool students are getting the adequate support that is needed. And so we don't think that that exemption is, that's a problem with the exemption. Senator Bunting also asked that the registry be made public, and I propose accepting his recommendation. Similar to the information issued regarding lawyers, doctors, certified land surveyors, etc. We would include the name, the area of expertise, the location, the license number, and or expiration date. So we have agreed with him on that, but that's really an operational detail when we get implemented. This morning we heard from Senator Longmore, and she brought up some very important points. And one of the points that she raised was in relation to mental health training. And this is really very important. And it's important that as we're treating with some of the issues that may come up, we do need to have that kind of expertise to deal with some of the matters that may be referred to the PPCC, for example. And so what we've agreed to do is to handle this administratively, and in our competency matrix for the board in terms of the minister's appointments, we would ensure that there is someone, at least one individual, who also has that training in the area of mental health. And so we will be addressing that one. In terms of public education, re-homeschooling, that was another point that Senator Longmore raised, and we do agree, and a lot of the terms that I just spoke about, many people do not know, and so we do have to do some more work in that, and so I agree with you there. Senator Crawford had a lot of questions and made a lot of statements. I have tried to distill some of it, but I thank Cavan Gale, Senator Gale, who answered some of them, so I don't need to answer everything. But there are some things that were said that I needed to clarify. Senator Crawford noted that education is in crisis, and I agree. And that is why I take this role very, very serious. Because our students, the results that we see are not what we want. No one wants to see the CXC results we saw last year. And we have to improve. We have to do better for our children. But you also noted that there was no implementation of the Patterson report, not enough implementation. And I disagree with that. This morning before coming to Senate, I was at a press conference where we were doing our quarterly update on the implementation of the Patterson report. We come to Jamaica every quarter to talk about our implementation. And when you say 23%, we have to understand, again, with maths, there are some of the recommendations have more weight than others. But that's not taken into account. They just have the 365, and then they say, it's 23% of the 365. But two of them may be actually the most meaningful in terms of transforming Jamaica. And so that's something that we have to look at when we are talking about percentages. Percentages can tell lies. And so we have to be very careful when we say, it's only 23%. We have to look at what are the actual ones being focused on. And so in today's press conference, for example, we spoke about what we're doing here today. the passage of this bill is precisely one of the key recommendations of the Patterson Report. The amendments we're doing to boards to strengthen our boards and to get the right people on boards are a part of the Patterson Report. And so that's really critical. The work that we're doing in terms of school nutrition and improving school nutrition, those are parts of the Patterson Report, and we're implementing all of those. And so I encourage Jamaicans to go onto the website for Trend Jamaica, because it lays out every single thing that we are doing. And we're even going up, we're going way outside of the Patterson Report too. When we talk about the rural bus service, that was not in the Patterson Report, and we are doing that. When we talk about so much of the tactical approach that we're doing now in our schools, where we've identified the schools that are not performing where we want them to be, and providing interventions. On my way here, after the press conference, I went to Holy Trinity. The students are on holiday, but our fifth formers are at school today, and I went to see them in their math camp. And so our ministry team was there with them. Their math teachers were there with them. We're intervening deeply with our students, even in the holidays, after school hours, on weekends. And so we're doing work. And so this is not the end all. This bill is important, but it's not the only thing. So this is just one element of it. One element of all of the work we're doing, and it would take me hours to talk about all the things that we are doing. Senator Crawford, you also spoke about absenteeism and your concerns there, and I am deeply concerned about absenteeism. And it is for that reason that we have to fix some things. And when you talk to the parents, especially in the rural areas, and I prefer to go to rural schools because that's when you really know what's going on, right? And I see it all the time, and they'll tell you we don't have the money to send the children to school. It costs too much for transportation. And then they sometimes don't have the money to feed the students. And so that's why the rural school bus system is so important, and why we want to implement that by September. Starting that, it's going to reduce the cost of a mother sending her children to school. Then also on the nutrition side, we already allocate $9 billion for our students in terms of the nutrition program. And what we have said is that that's not enough. We have identified the schools that are underperforming. It's 56 of them in high school and 140 something, I believe, in primary schools. And for those schools, those specific schools that we have to intervene in, they will get breakfast also. We've made that determination because for us, absenteeism is a concern. It's a big concern. And so we are dealing with that. In addition to that, one of the things too is we will be able to pick up absenteeism much better because we're using technology. In the Patterson Report also, the Patterson Report said we needed to implement an education management information system because we are making policies in the dark. And I'm happy to say that we are finally implementing the education management information system. What that means is that I can stay at the ministry and I can log in and I can see attendance records. We can see attendance records. We can know which schools have an absenteeism problem. We don't need to wait on a report from the school. We can pick it up right away. We can also layer into it which students are getting support, nutrition support. You can see all of that in the education management information system. And so you can make a lot more interventions and make it more using the data. All of that was in the Patterson Report, and we're implementing it. So we are implementing the Patterson Report. So I just want to assure you, Senator Crawford, that there are a lot of issues in our education system. A lot of issues. And they've been there for a long time. And we are working assiduously to make sure that we are able to benefit all of our children, and all of our children can have access to a better education. And it's going to take time. And it's a lot of initiatives, and we're going to have to be committed to all of them because they're all very important. Senator Crawford, you also asked about, and I think this was mentioned, why is the JTA not named? Kavan had answered that one. Senator Gale answered it, so I won't go into that. But you also mentioned UTEC and UE. UTEC is indeed named, and if you look in the third schedule, part B1E, not there, it's not that. That's in the third schedule, it is there in there. It says it very, very clearly that it is UE and UTEC. So if I go to the section, I see it right here. I know my bill very well, I can find my pages. It says very clearly that it would be a representative of the University of the West Indies nominated by the Vice Chancellor of that university, and one member shall be a representative of the University of Technology nominated by the president of that university. So UTEC is there. You mentioned the St. James High matter, and I'm not going to go into detail on that, but I just want to note that this matter dates back to 2014. I was not minister at the time, but it was from 2014, and it has been going on for a long time. My commitment is that I will do whatever I need to do, legislatively and otherwise, to address it. That is the key thing. We have to change more of our legislation to give the minister more power to intervene in instances like this. And we are doing that work, and you will see other amendments coming to here. I don't think I have enough to intervene in certain matters. I will continue in terms of definition of competence. Senator Crawford also brought that up. Per section 10 of the bill, the professional standards will be set in consultation with stakeholders. And throughout the bill it says this. Everything is in consultation with stakeholders, because stakeholders are important. And as we've done in drafting this bill, listening to all of the various stakeholders, that's how we will make determinations in terms of competence and in terms of even drafting the regulations. All right. Senator Crawford, I'm trying to get you to lunch. Senator Crawford also asked about virtual classes. And I know Senator Golding Campbell, you had also mentioned this issue of the standards developed and through consultations. You had mentioned that too, and that is highlighted here. Senator Crawford, you spoke about virtual classes. Bills are technology agnostic, and in this case, teaching is teaching, no matter the platform. And the act is to regulate teaching. Once you teach for pay, whether face-to-face or virtually, you must be regulated and held to a high standard. You asked about whether or not this covers community teaching or coaching in particular. In my opening, I had noted that support services were excluded under the second schedule. And we believe, though, that over time, in the future, we should bring them in. But for now, it is doing a lot. And so we did not bring in support services into this. So coaching and other teaching support services are excluded. You spoke about Auntie Jane and her early childhood institution, and you felt that this was preventing Auntie Jane from delivering a good service. And there are some really good Auntie Janes out there. But I also have a problem. When I look at the literacy level in a number of our primary schools, there's a problem. There's a big problem. And when you talk to the teachers in these primary schools, they say that the students that are coming from some of the basic schools are not ready for learning. It is a big, big problem. And so that's why we have the Early Childhood Commission, which says that all early childhood institutions must be registered. It is important. Even at the baby stage, we want to have standards so that our children will go into primary school prepared and ready for learning. And so it is important that Auntie Jane fall into this framework. And Auntie Jane, I'm telling all the Auntie Janes out there that we're here to help you, because we have scholarships that are available. We have many scholarships in the ministry where we can support Auntie Jane. The thing is that Auntie Jane can't be a nurse, Auntie Jane can't be a doctor, can't be a lawyer without being qualified to do so. So how can she be a teacher without the qualifications? That's not what we want for our children, and we want to help Auntie Jane to get there. And there are many pathways to teaching. Auntie Jane can be authorized to teach. Auntie Jane can also work with the JTC to attain the necessary standards for registration. And we have the scholarships there, and we have specialized scholarships, for example, for special education up to the master's level. And if you look at our scholarship program, Senator Crawford, a lot of teachers are benefiting from this. We have, in the last year, 67 teachers got scholarships, and they're specialist teachers in mathematics. And we want more of them. We want a lot more of them. And we had 155 teachers who were working in the areas where we have the greatest need, which is in science, mathematics, special education, IT is another area that we need a lot more people in. And so we're giving scholarships there, and we want to work with Auntie Jane to bring her up to speed. And the ministry remains committed to having one trained teacher in every early childhood institution. Right now, I am pleased to tell you that is just a little over 100 early childhood institutions that do not have a trained teacher. So the Ministry of Education is paying paid teachers in even private institutions. So even Auntie Jane's basic school, if she is registered, we will put a trained teacher there and pay them. All of them excepting 106 or 100 and something. So we've done a very good job. That's a very good job, and I think we need to commend the ministry team for all of the work they have done there.
A government like this, who needs an opposition?
All right. In terms of, there was another one that was raised by Senator Crawford, and you talked about flexibility in assigning teachers in the instance of shortage. As you know, the teachers will be licensed to teach with varied specializations, but the principal still will be able to assign teachers to on a short-term basis in the school. Yes, no, but in the school you can do that. You can say, I need you to fill in this period in the school. So yes, you can, in the school. So if a teacher is absent, you can have another teacher come and teach. Yes, the principal has the ability to do that. Yes, in the regulations, we'll make that very clear. Yeah. But even now, that's what is happening now. There was another one here. I'm going through the notes. I'm trying to get my last one. Yes. Yes. And all right, so I think I've gone through most of the questions. Those are the ones I thought were pertinent for the debate. But Mr. President, usually when you are establishing a new body and you have a brand new bill, you have to now wait and go and establish, and it takes a long time to put the body in place. We are in the wonderful position, Mr. President, because the JTC already exists. We just never had the bill, but it was being implemented. So, Mr. President, in closing, I would like to use this opportunity to highlight some of the exceptional work the Jamaica Teaching Council has been doing. Training and professional development access is expanding rapidly. In 24-25, that's the year just ended, 11,549 teachers participated in structured training, both online and in person. So continuous professional development that's spoken about in here is already happening. The system is supported by over 1,500 mentors, over 1,000 trainers of trainers, and teachers have year-round access to development resources via the JTC platform. So you just go on your phone or your laptop, and all teachers have laptops now. We gave vouchers to every single teacher for their laptop. So our teachers already, they don't have to wait on this bill to be passed. Our teachers already can go on the JTC platform and get their continuous professional development. Additionally, a special register was introduced for early childhood practitioners certified at Heart NSTA Level 3. And to address this, is the JTC still, you know, that's not even in the bill yet, that hasn't been approved. To address underperformance, 245 schools flagged by the National Education Inspectorate are receiving targeted support in math, reading, and ICT integration. And this is being done by the Teaching Council. Recognition for excellence has also dramatically increased through the LASCO Awards, which is done in conjunction with the JTC, which has expanded from 9 to 135 recipients covering all school levels. I was so happy earlier this year to go to the Emerging Teacher Seminar, which was put on by the Jamaica Teaching Council. And there are 1,230 teachers who are about to leave Teachers College. All of them, a sea of teachers at Mico University. I was able to address them. But why were they there? They were there to do courses and seminars in teaching. So you had persons there that were teaching them about how to use technology in the classroom. You had people talking about how to incorporate STEM and STEAM into their courses. You had people talking to them about money management. It was a beautiful seminar. So the JTC is already doing its work thanks to Dr. Gordon. And so the good thing is when we pass this bill, we will be able to just fly. We are not going to have to wait for years to build the infrastructure. So despite delays in passing the JTC bill, 21 years, the Council continues to advance the quality and accountability of the teaching profession, advocating and preparing for Jamaica's first fully licensed teaching framework. Mr. President, I must note that at every step, all stakeholders have had opportunity to contribute to the evolution of the Jamaica Teaching Council bill. For each change of administration, the respective cabinets and civil society have endorsed the continued pursuit of this bill. The Jamaica Teaching Council Bill 2025 is evidence of the determination of the government of Jamaica to enable and support good quality education for all our learners. Let us support our excellent, excellent teachers like those who I saw this morning on their Easter break at Matt's camp at Holy Trinity School. Let us support our excellent teachers by giving them the standards they deserve. Mr. President, without any delay, I ask that the bill be approved. And Mr. President, I ask that the bill be read a second time.
Thank you very much, Minister. The question is that the bill be read for a second time. Those in favor? Aye. Against?
Proper persons to teach, to create an enabling environment for the continuing professional development of teachers, and for those purposes to establish the Jamaica Teaching Council and to provide for connected matters read a second time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. The Senate will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate to consider the bill clause by clause. So with the concurrence of both leaders, I will go through as quickly as possible. There are 35 amendments which have been circulated, and then there has been two other amendments, 1 to 10 and 1 to 30, that have not been circulated, so the minister is going to have to read those. To the extent to which I can go en bloc, with your agreement, sir, madam, I will go through the amendments. And I'm going to ask the members to just stay with me here and let us move as quickly as possible. I put clause 1. Those in favor? I put the amendment to clause 2. Those in favor? I put clause 2 as amended. Those in favor? I put the amendment to clause 3. Those in favor? I put clause 3 as amended. Those in favor? I put clause 4. Those in favor? If there is an objection, you can just voice it rather than me asking against. I put clause 4. Those in favor? Good. I put the amendment to clause 5. Those in favor? I put the clause 5 as amended. Those in favor? Okay. I put clauses 6, 7,
I've just picked
1
up.
minute. So I put clause 6. Those in favor?
Okay.
Against? Good. I put clause 7. Senator, you wanted to say something?
Yes, Chairman. At clause 7.1, paragraph O, where it speaks to the functions of the council, is to assess the entry qualifications required by teachers and instructions. Is that word to be by or of? The qualifications are required of the teachers, correct? So I would suggest that as the amendment for 7.
Minister?
Chair, I have no objection to that, so I accept that.
It could be considered editorial, but we will take it anyway. So I put the proposed. I put the proposed amendment to 7. Those in favor? And put 7 as amended. Those in favor? Good. So I put 8, clauses 8 and 9. Those in favor? I put the amendment to clause 10. Minister, you're going to read that for me, please.
Chair, an amendment to clause 10.1. We're going to delete subclause 1 and substitute therefore the following. The council shall, by order, after consultation with stakeholders in the education sector and with the approval of the minister, develop and maintain, adapt or incorporate and apply professional standards of teacher competence and practice for the purpose set out in subsection 2. And
Members, I'm sorry? Members would have heard the proposed amendment to...
And there's another one.
To clause 10?
Yes.
Okay,
10.2.
go ahead. Okay, I'm sorry.
Delete subclause 3 and substitute therefore the following. The council may, by order, after consultation with stakeholders in the education sector and with the approval of the minister, amend any professional standard that the council has developed, adopted, or incorporated under section 1.
Thank you very much, Minister. Members would have heard the proposed amendments to clause 10. Those in favor? Aye. I put clause 10 as amended. Those in favor? Aye. I put clauses 11 to 29. Those in favor? Aye. No, remember I say you have to stay with me now, colleagues. 11 to 29. I put clauses 11 to 29. Those in favor? Aye. Good. I put the amendment to clause 30, which Minister is going to read. Minister, you have an amendment to 30.
I do. Chair, for clause 31, delete the words "the council" as they occur a second time and substitute therefore the word "itself." So the council was repeated in clause 31.
Thank you very much. Members would have heard the proposed amendment to 30. 30. Those in favor of the amendment? Those in favor of the clause as amended? Good, thank you. Yes, sir. Our member is asking for recommittal of clause number 10. 1 minute. Those in favor? Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Senator Crawford.
What do you call it again? Amendments. The second amendment provides me with some concern, because it says it can be amended by the minister seemingly at any point. If it can be reread, please. Yes.
So it says the council may, by order, after consultation with stakeholders in the education sector and with the approval of the minister, amend any professional standard that the council has developed, adopted, or incorporated under Section 1. So there may be instances in the future where one of the standards that would have been set, you may want to change it. So what it's saying is that you can do so by order with the approval of the minister.
So where there's a standard, for example, educational level. For example, we have now requested level 3 for heart to be, the original people will be grandfathered in, or?
Yes. Yeah, you wouldn't want to disadvantage anyone.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Crawford. So I put clauses 31 to 43. Those in favor?
Aye.
There is an amendment to 40. I'm sorry, yes, 43. So I put, yes, there is an amendment to 44. Those in favor of the amendment to 44?
Aye.
Against? I put clause 44 as amended. Those in favor?
Aye.
There's an amendment to 45. Which amendment I put? Those in favor?
Aye.
I put clause 45 as amended. Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I put the amendment to clause 46. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put 46 as amended. Those in favor?
Aye.
There's an amendment to 47. I put 47, the amendment to 47. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I put 47 as amended. I put clauses 48, 49, and 50. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put the amendment to 51. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put 51 as amended. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put clauses 52, 53, 54, and 55. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put the amendment to 56. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put 56 as amended. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put clause 57. Those in favor?
Aye.
There's an amendment. There's an amendment to 58, and I put that amendment. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put 58 as amended. I put 59. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put the amendment to 60. I put the amendment to clause 60. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put clause 60 as amended. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put clauses 61 and 62. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put the amendment to 63. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put 63 as amended. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put 64, 65, 66, 67, and 68. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put the amendment to 69. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put 69 as amended. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put the amendment to 70. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put 70 as amended. Those in favor?
Aye.
Good. I put the amendment to 71. Those in favor? I put 71 as amended. Those in favor?
Aye.
Good. I put 72, 73, and 74. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put the amendment to clause 75. Those in favor? I put 75 as amended. 1 minute. Yeah, those in favor?
Aye.
That's for 75. Mr. Cohen, look here.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I put clauses 76 to 84. Those in favor? Okay, I think we are now at the schedules, Mr. Cohen. Okay. There's an, I have it here. Yeah. There's an amendment to the first schedule, and I put that amendment. Those in favor?
Aye. In deleting the words, aye.
I'm wondering if some of these were not
Editorial
anyway, but nevertheless, here we go. I put the amendment to the second schedule. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put the second schedule as amended. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put the amendment to the third schedule. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put the third schedule as amended. Yes, Senator Crawford. Yes, sir. I'm going. Voted on it. I'm going to ask that it be recommitted. Yes, Mr. Crawford.
Yes, sir. The third schedule, Part B, outlines the membership of the committee. Within it is a second category of teacher, meaning a teacher of competence, but there is seemingly no representation for principals. I would want that to be reconsidered, to be replaced by a representative of the Principal Association.
What section?
Which one?
Yeah, I'm in Schedule 3 now.
Yeah, which one?
Which one of the points would you like to change?
Minister may need help. Madam, Minister may need some. You need some guidance here.
No.
Sorry, come again, Mr. Crawford.
I am opening in the third schedule, Part B lists those who are the members of the committee.
Yes.
Council.
Of the council. I'm saying from my observation, a very important participant meeting the principals through their principals association have no representation. Yet there are 6 teachers and a space for another teacher of competence. I'm recommending that the principals be considered as a part of the committee of the council.
My understanding, Senator, is that the reference to teachers does not preclude principals.
Yes, and the JTA would also suggest that, but it is possible that the committee could exist without the representation of school leadership. And I would propose that be specific, that at least one representation of leadership through the principals and their association be considered.
Minister, I can go on and then we'll come back to it.
Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Senator.
Yeah, thank you. At the same clause, the same listing, I am wondering if we cannot also include the requirement for, as was mentioned, the mental health training. We have persons here knowledgeable or experienced in finance or public administration. Can we have a similar reflection for health and or mental health, please?
Okay, Minister, you have 2 requests.
Yes,
one to specify principle and one to deal with mental health. I'm not going to call on you now. I'm going to go back to it. So we're going to go back to the third schedule. Okay. There's an amendment. There's amendment to the 4th schedule. Those in favor? There's an amendment to the 4th schedule. Those in favor? I put the 4th schedule as amended. Those in favor? I put the 5th schedule and the 6th. I'm sorry, I put the 5th schedule. There is an amendment to the 5th schedule. Those in favor of the amendment? Those in favor of the 5th schedule, I'm hungry. Those in favor of the 5th schedule as amended? 5th schedule as amended? I put the 6th schedule. Those in favor? I put this amendment to the 7th schedule. Those in favor? I put the 7th schedule as amended. That's why I tell you have to stay with me now. I put the 7th schedule as amended. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the 3rd schedule.
Thank you, Mr. President. In relation to the last 2 points in terms of Schedule 3, we have a 31-member board, which is already very big, and I do accept the recommendation in relation to principals and also in terms of mental health practitioners. And my proposal, as I had said earlier with mental health practitioners in terms of the regulations, is to make it very clear that in relation to the registered teachers, that 2 of them should be principals. That will be in the regs. We will put that in the regs, but just noting that principals are teachers. And so they would have already been eligible, but we'll make it more explicit in the regulations. And it would be the same that we would do in relation to. Pardon? So it could be a part of the JTA 6 or the ministers, but there have to be 2 who are principals on the board, at least 2. Well, I will be in the, I hear you. I wish you luck. So that was on Schedule 3. So no amendment for that one.
What's the solution for the mental? Because
I said I would put it into the regulations. It would be in the regs.
Yeah, it would have to be here. No?
All right.
What I'm
I'll keep it as
understanding
is.
from you is that both,
I'll be keeping it as is.
both will be dealt with at the,
Elsewhere,
in the regulations.
yeah, elsewhere.
Okay. So I now put, I put the amendment to the 3rd schedule. Those in favor? I put the 3rd schedule as amended. Those in favor? Fantastic. I know. I put the title and enacting clause. I put the title and enacting clause. Those in favor? Good. So follow me now. The question is that I do report the bill as having passed committee stage with 37 amendments. Those in favor? Against? Yes, 35 were circulated and 2 were added to make 37. Oh, I'm sorry. There was. Yeah, I'm treating the amendment. I'm treating the proposal from Senator. I'm treating the amendment as an editorial matter, so it's 37. Mr. Yeah. We're in due course. Thank you very much. I do report the bill as having passed committee stage with 37 amendments. (38) with the editorial.
Mr. President, I now ask that the bill be read a 3rd time.
The question is that the bill be read a 3rd time. Those in favor? Against?
An act to formalize and advance teaching as a profession to contribute to improving the quality of teaching and learning in Jamaica by regulating the entry and standing of members of the teaching profession, to establish and maintain the registers of teachers and the role of instructors, to establish and maintain professional standards for teacher competence and practice, to regulate the professional conduct of teachers to ensure, in the interests of students and in the public interest, that teachers are fit and proper persons to teach, to create and enable an environment for the continuing professional development of teachers, and for those purposes to establish a body to be called the Jamaica Teaching Council, and to provide for connected matters read for a 3rd time and passed.
Thank you very much. I wish to just offer thanks and congratulations to all the persons involved, the stakeholders, Minister Favour Williams, and I think that Mr. Crawford wanted to say something about this, Minister.
I must say that I am encouraged by some of the reports that I have heard from the minister. I am pleased with the efforts that she has exhibited, and this being her first bill as Minister of Education, I offer my own congratulations to the minister, and I thank you for your commitment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, look here. I don't think I can say it better. I don't think I can say it better than Mr. Crawford. Thank you very much, members of the parliamentary staff who have gone a bit over today. Minister?
Thank you, Mr. President. And Mr. President, I couldn't bring this debate, or rather this sitting, to a close without adding my own words of commendation to the minister for having so expertly piloted a mammoth bill that has been more than 2 decades in gestation. So I really want to ask that we again express our appreciation to the minister. I add, of course, my voice of appreciation to the stakeholders present today, to the ministry team, Dr. Gordon, who has really been at this for some time, and the JTC team that has been keeping the work done in parallel in the very best interests of our students and indeed the teachers who form their minds every day. So, Mr. President, as we continue to remain committed to the important work of this Senate, the passage of laws for the peace and good governance of Jamaica land we love, we recognize the importance of the education sector to the achievement of all we do as a country and as a nation, as leaders who occupy this chamber, and therefore celebrate the fact that we're able to bring the Senate to a close today at a time at which we have no further business to do. I ask for the Senate to be adjourned for a date to be fixed.
Members should have heard the question. Those in favor? This Honourable Senate now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.
For the Nature Conservancy in Jamaica. Did you know that 2023 was the hottest year ever in the history of recorded temperatures in Jamaica? And nowhere has the heat been more scorching than in our capital city, Kingston. All happening in the midst of a construction boom and urban heat island effects that is challenging traditional construction practices and prompting us to find more novel ways to build to beat the heat. We can learn from city-states like Singapore, which is integrating nature-based solutions in their urban designs, manifesting as eye-catching green roofs, vertical gardens and green walls. Plants provide shade, reduce heat absorption by buildings and release water vapor to provide a cooling effect and result in savings on air conditioning and other energy costs. Have you considered how nature-based solutions can make that distinctive difference to your next development? Learn more by visiting the United Nations Environment Programme project website, cityadapt.com, or simply scan this QR code right here. As Jamaica adapts to climate change, you can build better to beat the heat. Hi, I'm Donna Onis-Blake, Program Director for the Nature Conservancy in Jamaica. Like me, you will remember the rains of November 2023, which came just outside of the May and September to October peak rainfall period. There was significant dislocation and distress across Kingston, flooded out residential dwellings, badly damaged roadways, and washed out basements amid general alarm across the city. Researchers at the University of the West Indies have cited high-intensity rainfall events as a major hydrometeorological hazard affecting Jamaica, noting that Kingston is highly susceptible to urban flooding, primarily in the downstream sections of the Hope River watershed and the Ligony Plains. Notwithstanding Jamaica's enviable building codes, is there room for improvement